Good evening. Call to order this May 4th meeting of the Winston-Salem City Council and ask the City Secretary to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Light.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Vesey.
Here.
Councilmember Montgomery.
Here.
Councilmember Burke.
Here. And
Councilmember
Mayor, may I
Adams.
just say this?
Yes.
At the last meeting, I did come, but because of the poor infrastructure in the United States, I could not get from the airport because they had a storm in Charlotte and the gates would not open up. But I was in City Hall.
That's right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Adams.
Here.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Here.
And Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Thank you. Would you please join the City Council and me for a moment of silence? Thank you. And would you join the City Council and me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I recognize our Sergeant at Arms tonight. It's Lieutenant Tom Boyles. Lieutenant, thank you for being with us. May we have the first item?
Proclamation declaring the month of May Building Safety Month. City of Winston-Salem Proclamation, Office of the Mayor. Whereas our city's continuing efforts to address critical issues of safety, energy efficiency, and resilience in the built environment that affect our citizens both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster give us confidence that our structures are safe and sound. And whereas our confidence is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, laborers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings, and whereas these guardians, dedicated members of the International Code Council, use a governmental consensus process that brings together local, state, and federal officials with expertise in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect Americans in the buildings where we live, learn, work, worship, and play. And whereas building safety, maximizing resilience, minimizing risk is the theme for Building Safety Month 2015, encourages all Americans to raise awareness of the importance of building a safe, energy-efficient, resilient construction, to be mindful of fire prevention, disaster mitigation, and backyard safety, and to recognize that countless lives have been saved due to implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies. And whereas Building Safety Month is a time when Americans are asked to consider projects to improve building safety and sustainability at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, I, Alan Joines, Mayor of the City of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2015 Building Safety Month in Winston-Salem, and I encourage our citizens to join with their communities to participate in Building Safety Month activities. Given under my hand and sealed this 4th day of May 2015, Alan Joines, Mayor.
Council members, I thought this was an extraordinarily important issue. The reason I'm asked to put it on the agenda tonight, Dan Dockery, one of our chief building inspectors, has been working very closely with our representatives of the building industry, and a number of them are here tonight. I see Drew Hancock, Frank L. Bloom, and several others there. But I'm going to ask Mr. Norby to make some opening comments, and I believe you might have a brief video, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thanks to TV 13, they have helped us put together a video that illustrates to the public the importance of the role that the inspectors and the building community do in partnership in making sure that buildings are built to be safe for all of its occupants, whether they be businesses or for citizens. So we're going to roll the video, and then afterwards can present the proclamation to Dan.
how are you?
I'm great. Are you Nathan?
Yes, sir.
Alex Ellis, Winston-Salem Inspections. How
Nice
can
to
I
meet
help
you.
you?
We had some violations from the Forsyth County Fire Department regarding our grease hood, and I'd like you to check them out.
Let's take a look at
Sure,
it.
follow
Show me
me.
where it's at. I'll be glad to.
City County inspectors log thousands of hours examining mechanical equipment, plumbing, and electrical systems. Each one is state certified and undergoes extensive training to ensure safe operations in every type of business.
All this equipment has to be placed in a minimum of 6 inches beyond the overhang. So this stuff needs to be basically just pushed together and reorganized underneath the hood. Then our fire suppression nozzles, we need those positioned. They need to be rearranged to where the nozzle itself is directly over the heat source.
Okay.
I will call the contractor, get him to come out and make the corrections to it.
Okay, are we going to be able to open right now, or?
And they understand not being able to do business
Not right now, but
Okay.
you will open for lunch.
We will be open for lunch.
Yeah.
just isn't an option.
Hey, Nathan.
Hey.
Re-inspected your hood.
Okay.
Everything's good to go. They got all the corrections made. You're ready to open for business.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
These experts help businesses, small and large, meet deadlines, protect jobs, and keep taking care of residents like you.
Hey, Captain.
Hey, Dan.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing good. What you got?
We had you dispatched out. We discontinued service to the residents. Had a pretty significant fire in the kitchen, which extended into the attic area.
Okay. You want to show me what you got?
Sure. Let's go take a look.
Cool.
Dan, as I spoke to you out in the yard, we do have significant damage. Appears the fire started in this area and traveled up the wall, and we've got some significant structural damage here from the fire. As you can see, it breached to the outside.
Yeah, well, we'll get on it, Captain. I appreciate you showing it to me. We know where to get started now. Thanks.
Dan, as you can see, we've got some pretty significant damage inside the structure.
It's going to be a little worse than she thinks it's going to be.
Right.
I'm afraid. But we'll work with her. We've talked to everybody.
Hey, when do
Hey,
y'all
Miss
think I
Holden.
can get back in my house again?
Well, Ms. Holman, this is Dan Dockery with the City Inspections Department. Since we had to disconnect service with Duke Power, he's the gentleman that's going to let you know when you can re-enter.
Okay.
Hey, Miss Holman.
Hey.
I'm sorry. We've talked to your contractors. We've talked to your insurance company. There's a lot of damage, but I promise you we're going to get you back in as soon as we possibly can. Just bear with us, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Almost 400,000 residents live in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. When the worst of the unexpected happens, city county building inspectors are on the scene, working with other emergency responders to help you through the difficulties. Every year, these professionals work with thousands of residents across the area,
Hey, how's it going? You all right today?
making sure their new homes, their additions, and their improvements meet building codes and are safe.
Oh, that's perfect, Miss McNeil. All right.
Because there are just some places where you don't cut corners.
We're Winston-Salem, Forsyth County inspectors. We're proactive preventers.
Doing?
Dan Dockery. We check, we double check, we triple check all the little details so that the first responders don't have to show up at your home. It's your home, your school, your place of worship, and they're yours as long as you're there. But we inspected them. They're ours forever. Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, this is our community. This is our home.
Very nice. Mr. Dockery?
bringing the troops.
You got a group there. Dan and ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the City of Winston-Salem, I'm happy to proclaim this Building Safety Month here in Winston-Salem, and appreciate all of your efforts to bring attention to this very important issue and help continue to make our city and our citizens safe places to live and work and play and relax, as Councilmember Taylor says. Dan, would you like to add a word?
I would. Mayor, Council, building codes are a marvelous thing, and I love them, and they're extremely important. I look at the people behind me here, members of our building community commercial, our residential home builders, our design community, our planning community, our fire prevention community, all of them partners. And yeah, building codes are important. Building relationships is what Winston-Salem has managed to do with all these people, and it's made our community a great place to grow in, a great place to be safe. It gives us health, well-being in the built environment, and it provides comfort for those people who we all depend on when they go home in the afternoons. We want them to feel good about the place they live, the place they play, the place they worship, the place they go to school. And thanks to the partners, we've been able to do it, and we hope it lasts a long time. But thank you.
Thank you all very much. Yeah, Dan, how about could you introduce the group of distinguished folks you have with us tonight?
I would love to. Frank L. Bloom, Drew Hancock, Mike Lancaster, architects in town, Jimmy Norwood, Miss Becky, who I just got to meet and is president-elect of AIA, Becky McCormick. From Applied Engineering, Chris McCropolis. In Planning, Desmond Corley. And from Fire Prevention Services, City of Winston-Salem, Mr. Eric Hutchins.
Thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Dan. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's agenda of the City Council is comprised of the following items. We have 8 rezoning petitions. I'm sorry, we have one more resolution before we jump into that. Councilmember McIntosh will be after me if we did that. So, next resolution.
Resolution declaring Historic Preservation Month in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, May 2015. Whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for managing growth, revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability, and whereas historic preservation is relevant for urban and rural communities across the nation and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds, and whereas it is important to celebrate the role of our history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as a people. And whereas Preservation on the Move is the local theme for National Historic Preservation Month 2015, established by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Winston-Salem do hereby declare the month of May 2015 as National Historic Preservation Month and call upon the people of Winston-Salem to join their fellow citizens across the United States in recognizing and participating in this special observance. Be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the City Council and that a copy be furnished to the Forsyth County Historic Resources Commission.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. And Councilmember McIntosh is going to present the resolution. I believe Jeff Sowers, the Vice Chair of our Historic Resources Commission, is here.
I want to take a minute and thank not only the professionals in the community that we're so blessed to have, but also staff and the amateur preservationists out there who take on projects and complete them and do a great job of retaining the built environment that we're so fortunate to have. You want to say?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. A few things, if you don't mind. First, I would like to thank Mayor Joines, Jeff McIntosh, City Council, men and women on recognizing May 2015 as Historic Preservation Month. Again, I'm the Vice Chair of the HRC, and you do, as you receive in your packets, the agenda from our highlights last year. I'd like to go over a few of those, if you don't mind, some of the accomplishments that we achieved. Under the Education Committee, we started off the year with a bang. We had a ribbon cutting ceremony at the West End Mill Works that was located at 918 Bridge Street. The owners had taken several old mill buildings and converted to kind of craftsman trades in multi-purpose space that used the mill tax credits. Another one that we had under that month was an open house for the George Black House and Brickyard. This was a very heavily attended event, had over 150 folks coming out to see Mr. Black's residence and the brick kilns. This is where it all started for his production of his handmade bricks that has now become nationally significant. Some other activities under the Historic Marker Committee, they consist of 2 city-funded markers that were unveiled in 2014. Under your guidance, one of them was the new Bethel Baptist Church, where a spiritual leader and educationer, Reverend Jerry Drayton Jr., served as pastor for 72 years. Mr. Drayton was a champion for residential equality and served on numerous local and statewide boards. He was instrumental in improving education for the illiterate and housing of the homeless. Another unveiling occurred last October was the Ballou Street neighborhood. This was the community that was thriving in the early 1940s with predominantly working class African Americans who were employed by mostly the local tobacco companies. During the late 50s, when the construction started of US 52, unfortunately the neighborhood ceased to exist. We now have a plaque that helps to remind us of this neighborhood that was a sense of place and is a tight-knit community after hearing a lot of numerous stories about former residents. Other activities of the commission was that we reviewed and made comments on 7 National Register of Historic Place nominations. I'd like to single out one for highlighted, that is the Reynolds Building. The Reynolds Building was the predecessor of the Empire State Building. It was built in 1929 and is an exemplary example of an Art Deco skyscraper. It was, at the time, the tallest building in the United States south of Baltimore, Maryland, and won a National Architectural Award. Under architectural survey updates, we are very excited about the new manuscript that's being published. It's called the Winston-Salem Architectural Heritage. It's authored by Heather Fernbach. It is a comprehensive overview of the city's distinctive built environment, ranging from individual mid-18th century dwellings to post-modern skyscrapers. This publication will be available on June 1st of this year. And as you can see, there's lots of activities that are occurring this month. The next one will be this Friday, is the RJR Labor Strikes Historic Marker Unveiling. And again, I would like to thank you for this resolution and recognizing preservation as an important part of our heritage and our fine community. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Sauer. Councilmember Clark.
Mr. Mayor, before the meeting started, a number of folks had to leave the room because we didn't have enough seating. Would the Sergeant at Arms mind checking to see if there's any folks in the outside, because we do have 7 or 8 seats have opened. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. All right, now we'll move to the agenda. Tonight's agenda is comprised of the following items. There are 8 rezoning petitions. There's 1 UDO text amendment. There's an item approving financial assistance for an economic development project, an item approving requests for certificates of public convenience and necessity. There's an item amending Chapter 74 of the City Code, as well as an item making recommendations for appointments or reappointments to city boards and commissions. The rezoning petitions, the UDO text amendment, and the item approving financial assistance, and one of the requests for the certificates of public convenience are listed for public hearings. When the public hearings are called, persons in the council chamber will be given an opportunity to speak. If there is opposition to the rezoning petitions, the proponents and opponents will each have 15 minutes for presentation and 3 minutes for rebuttal. If no one wishes to speak, the public hearings will be closed and the City Council will consider the item. We are televising this meeting live tonight on TV 13. It'll be replayed tomorrow at 9 a.m. and again Wednesday at 9 p.m. Of course, copies of our agenda as well as videos of our meetings are always available to the public by simply going to the city's website at www.cityofws.org and just simply select the Watch Meetings Online option. Ms. Phillips, may we have the first item?
Item 1, public hearing on zoning petition of Alfonso Gilberto Mendez Vargas and Ma Estela Magana Angel from LOS and RS9 to RS9, property located on the east side of Queensbury Road, north of Country Club Road, located in the West Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Is there anyone in the council chamber who is opposed to this rezoning? I know the petitions are here if there are any questions. All right, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed and recognize Councilmember Clark.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I don't think we need a presentation on this. This was zoned residential RS9 several years ago. We rezoned it to limited office, and now they want it rezoned back to residential single-family RS9. So I will move 1, adoption of the statement of consistency is set forth on page 21 of the agenda book, and 2, approval of W3259.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That is unanimous. Council members, I do want to backtrack for just one quick second. We have an item tonight, item number 12, related to buskers, and as you know, that was coming before the council for a second reading. My understanding is Councilmember Taylor would like to offer an amendment to that ordinance, and in order to do that, what I would suggest is that we vote on the ordinance as it's presented and then consider Councilmember Taylor's proposed amendment. It would take unanimous consent to add this item to the agenda, so I'm asking now, is there unanimous consent to add this item?
Yes.
Seeing everyone, so we'll add that item. Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Now we'll go to item number 2.
Item 2, public hearing on zoning petition of the City of Winston-Salem for property owned by Robert and Cynthia McNeely from LBL to LBL, property located on the southwest side of Renolda Road, southeast of Yadkinville Road, located in the Northwest Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Is there anyone in the council chamber who is opposed to this rezoning? Again, I believe the petitioner's here. All right, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed, and I'll recognize Councilmember McIntosh.
Right, and this really is coming back to us because of a misunderstanding between the petitioner for a rezoning case and staff, and it was an honest mistake. I'm not sure really it was a mistake on whoever's fault, but it's just really putting back some uses that were in that they were entitled to prior to them getting their change. So it's more or less a procedural thing. So I move for 1, adoption of the statement of consistency as set forth on page 43 of the agenda book, and 2, approval of W3261.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 3.
Item 3, public hearing on zoning petition of Moravian Home Incorporated from RS9 to RM18L, property located on the north side of Indiana Avenue, across from Triangle Drive, located in the North Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Again, is there anyone in the council chamber who is opposed to this rezoning? All right, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed and recognize Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to say in the North Ward, here we grow again. I want to thank Salem Town for all that they do in the community over there off of Indiana. They've gone from a very small assisted living facility to now they're growing towards the initiative like most, I would say, baby boomers retirement and assisted living facilities that includes a lot of amenities. So with that, I move for 1, adoption of the statement of consistency as set forth on page 65 of the agenda book, and 2, approval of W3262.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 4.
Item 4, public hearing on zoning petition of Mid-Huff Ventures Incorporated from RS9 and HB to HBL, property located on the southeast corner of South Main Street and Cassell Street, located in the Southeast Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
We will hold a public hearing on this item, and I'll ask the proponents to begin. Bob Middleton. Yes. A proponent. You're opposed to it?
He's the petitioner.
Right, you're the petitioner. Would you like to make a presentation?
Only if needed be. We'll hear from
All right, very good. We'll then move to the opponents. Caroline Highsmith. Your name and address for the record, please, Ms. Highsmith.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Highsmith. I live at 3335 Anderson Drive, 27127. I am here on behalf of the Conneaut Hills Community Association that is standing side by side with the South Crest neighborhood in opposition to the petitioner's request for developing parcels of vacant land at the corner of South Main Street and Cassell Street that directly abut against both the Conneaut Hills and South Crest residential areas. We would overwhelmingly prefer that this property not be developed at all, given the extremely close proximity to both of our dense residential neighborhoods, our ongoing problems with crime, and the inevitable increase in traffic and traffic problems on South Main Street and Cassell Streets with such new commercial development. However, both neighborhoods can live with the highway business limited proposed zoning if we can respectfully request some additional neighborhood protective zoning restrictions. That is, the removal of the entire category of retail and the removal of dating services, escort services, and tattoo parlors. Since the City County Planning Board agreed to remove and prohibit dating and escort services plus tattoo parlors, we are asking the City Council to also remove the retail category to provide neighborhood protective zoning restrictions to the HBL proposed zoning. The petitioner would then be left with offices and all of the categories under Services A for the highway business limited zoning. We feel so strongly about this request that we started a petition campaign and have obtained 182 signatures, and all of y'all have copies of that, backing our request to remove the category of retail plus tattoo parlors and dating and escort services. This petition drive is all about the need to get this high intensity and high traffic HBL zoning under better control to protect the health, safety, and integrity of both of our neighborhoods now and in the future. Ensuring ongoing public safety has become an especially high priority for both of our neighborhoods, given the history of the former and now vacant Nitty Gritty, where a family restaurant morphed into a nightclub, and in 2013 was the site of gun violence involving alcohol and drug use. This area, unfortunately, still attracts unsavory criminal elements and illegal activities and has a history of gang activity. So it is imperative that zoning around the Conneaut Hills and South Crest areas promotes our health and safety, where future businesses do not become magnets for criminal activities, especially in their parking lots. Because our neighborhoods felt so strongly about the zoning issue, we actually went on a field trip to investigate 5 commercial properties owned by the petitioner. We found in all of these multiple rental sites a variety of high-intensity commercial and retail zoning. However, the petitioner is only renting his commercial units primarily to offices and services. Therefore, our request to remove the category of retail should in no way impact the petitioner's business plan or his bottom line, or we would not be requesting the removal of the retail category. So therefore, in conclusion, the Conneaut Hills and South Crest neighborhoods urgently request that the City Council, because we have 2 neighborhoods who are requesting this, not just one, and 182 petition signatures, that you approve our request to remove the additional category of retail, plus tattoo parlors and dating and escort services. Our neighborhoods must have some protection against the potential future problems associated with the renting of commercial units to unknown entities who can be harmful to our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Bernard Van Eaton.
Yes, I'm Bernard Van Eaton. I reside at 210 Cassell Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I have some of the pictures here of some of the businesses that we went out on the field trip and looked at. How do you use this? There's the one on Indiana Avenue. There's one on Wachovia Street. Now, this is what we are afraid of if it goes to retail that we may run into. Here's another one on Wachovia Street. And as you can see, this is Wachovia Street. And this one is Wartown Street. Now, before I make my statement, I would like to respectfully say that I respect this council. I also respect my councilman, Taylor, but I feel that I need to make this statement, and it may have a bearing on what you decide tonight. When the taxpaying citizens begin to have when will taxpaying citizens begin to have a voice in what comes into their communities? It's a shame when the community has to create a petition to attempt to keep our area a safe place to live in. When I was a child, Leroy's Barbecue, Dixon's Animal Hospital, and a gas and convenience store were in the community. Even after I moved into the neighborhood almost 40 years ago, Leroy's was then converted into Steamboat Seafood. The convenience store became B&S Convenience Store. I don't oppose to economic development, but don't we have enough blighted and vacant buildings without possibly putting another one right next to a resident? There's the crime element. I'm quite sure you are aware of the problems that we have had and are having in the parking lots that spread out into the neighborhoods, which is a concern to us because we do have some widows and older residents who do not need that any extra threats on their safety. It seems to be okay to let developers who live in other areas petition to rezone otherwise peaceful neighborhoods under disguise of progress, and when they get their financial reward, they leave the community with the problems they created. After all, they don't have to contend with them because they don't live there. In conclusion, would you approve zoning changes in your neighborhood for business developers' prosperity? No. So please consider us also by respecting our request to move the categories of retail plus dating and escort services and tattoo parlors from the proposed HBL zoning. We need these zoning protections to protect the future health and safety of our neighborhood areas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in opposition to this rezoning petition? All right, seeing no one, we'll now go back to the proponents. If you'd like 3 minutes of rebuttal.
I'm Bob Middleton, 257 Trinity Church Road, King, North Carolina. In reference to the pictures that were shown, there was none shown of other two properties that have new buildings on them. And I have two pictures of what's to be built on this property. I need to give them to you. That is the picture of the beauty shop that will be built on this property. There will be a duplex building on the 2 units. It will be just double what you see there. It's a duplex, and that is, I still want the business to stay in there because it is business to build a building to rent. I have, I don't know how many businesses that I have put in business, small business, people that can't afford to go into business at the high price of rent of these buildings around town. I have, like the beauty shops, I put this equipment in them so that the people that rent them does not have one payment, that's their rent payment. They don't have to worry about their equipment. Now, on the Crime, we got crime all over Winston-Salem, King, everywhere else. In my talking with the planning board, the property that is 2.2 acres or something like this, all the property that is in woods down there that face Casale Street, there will be no driveway put in off of Casale Street. There will be nothing, no trees cut. It will be left as is because there is a small stream through the property, a city sewer line which runs above ground through this property. The only property that we would be focusing on is probably no more than 3/4 an acre at the most. It's already graded. It's the reason for the rezoning, it is rezoned highway business on South Main Street as is. The back is a residential lot, RS9, that can never be built on. It's hollow and comes off of Casale Street facing and coming back through the property. The reason we need that lot rezoned to HBL is that to build a commercial building, you have to stay 40 feet from a residential property. And this would just give me the 40 feet. Nothing would be built on this RS9 lot.
Built under your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The opposition would have 3 minutes for rebuttal if you choose.
Our main issue is we are not disputing the fact that he wants to build 3 commercial units on this property and that it's being zoned Highway Business Limited. We're just asking for neighborhood protective zoning restrictions, which means we want the category of retail removed to help us with our crime problem. And then the dating and escort services and tattoo parlors. It's the best compromise that we could reach, we thought, to give a balance to the neighborhood and the needs of the petitioner. So he can build his 3 units. We think the residential units that he's building are very compatible to the neighborhood area. We're concerned about the future zoning of the neighborhood if he should sell his property, because once it's zoned Highway Business Limited with everything as it is now, it's going to be very difficult to change. So we want these neighborhood protective zoning restrictions added. Remove the retail category. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the opposition? Yes, sir.
My name is Cassidy Wagner. I did not set out to speak tonight, so I'm speaking on a
Would
separate
you
issue.
give your address, please?
It's 2422 Lucille Street,
Thank
Winston-Salem,
you.
North Carolina, 27127. I live directly across the street from a man who lives in King. For the petitioner to come here and lecture us who live in the Southeast Ward on things like crime when he doesn't live in our neighborhood is a farce. I would ask that you please support the opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask Mr. Norby to give the report of the planning board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You see the map here of the site shown in yellow. And as you can see, the underlying zoning, a little more than half of the property in yellow is already zoned HB, and as I'm going to show you in a second, the most of the developable part of the property is already zoned HB General. And as you know, HB General allows a wide variety of uses. They are listed in your agenda book on page 93, just a very large number of uses that are allowed by right with the existing zoning there. This is an aerial photo of the area, obviously a very developed neighborhood with some mixed-in commercial there. These are some ground shots looking north on Main Street. The property in question is immediately to the right. There's a driveway cut right there. This is really the developable part of the property. The petitioner was saying the part that was graded, this is it, that is on the southern part of the property. This is looking south on Main Street toward the neighborhood in that direction. The property in question is immediately to the left of the camera. And then this is across the street from the property. This is also zoned commercial. You just saw the petitioner put up this exhibit. He has volunteered these and said he was willing to have a condition that any building plans for the site must be in substantial conformance with this. This is your adopted South Suburban Area Plan from 2011. As you can see, the entire site is shown for recommended commercial land use. As I mentioned, the site now has split zoning, with the majority of the site already zoned HB general use with no special limitations or conditions, which means that if this case got denied, there could be something built under the HB general zoning, perhaps not as many as the 3 units the petitioner was talking about, but certainly some commercial development without the restrictions that are proposed here. As you saw, the South Suburban Plan recommends commercial land use for the entire site. The existing HB district allows 78 uses by right, and you can see some of the examples there. The 3 requested uses are offices, retail store, and services A. And the proposed conditions that go along with this address building appearance, limited signage, which would be smaller and lower than the signage that the HB district would allow, the north side of the stream and everything to Cassell Street remaining undisturbed, and further limiting the use of services A to prohibit tattoo parlors, dating services, and escort services. So the petitioner at the planning board meeting did volunteer the additional restriction on that. On April 9th at the planning board hearing, there were 2 citizens who spoke against. They presented a petition against. The planning board asked the petitioner if he'd be willing to further restrict the uses, and he agreed to further restrict services A, as I just had explained. And the planning board recommended approval since they felt that the proposed zoning is much more restrictive than the present HB general zoning for most of the site. Be glad to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Norby? Mr. Clark?
I was looking in the book here. I don't see a architectural type map. Can you comment a little bit more on this 40-foot setback, and could you put the buildings on the street and put the parking behind it? Does that meet it?
Yes, it could. Well, the 40-foot setback is a requirement for a building in a commercial district up against a single-family residential.
Yeah.
So the building must be 40 feet back from that. But the petitioner wants to make use of the entirety of that cleared area that you see on the aerial photo that extends back there. And and in that, he believes that he could build those 3 commercial units that he's talking about. If it weren't rezoned, then you would be back to the area that within that red outlined HB, which is, I would say, probably about 2/3 to 3/4 of that area south of the creek in that cleared area. So he could still build some and meet that 40-foot setback, but it probably wouldn't be the 3 units that he's talking about.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Norby? Councilman McIntosh?
So is the siting of these buildings going to be small end towards the street?
He didn't propose a site plan with it. It's HBL, but that's our thought, is that he's probably going to have to line them perpendicular to the street to get them in. If he rearranged it to have 2, he could probably put the buildings back with parking in front, or put the parking in back.
Right.
He would have some options there.
Okay. If we were rezoning this area today, wouldn't we look at the neighborhood business zone as more appropriate than highway business?
Yes, but the difficulty is you've got this HB zoning there, and so we're looking at what's better, the present zoning or the more restrictive zoning.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councilman Light.
I've been to the neighborhood meeting on this, and I really do believe that concessions have been made to the more
tattoo parlors and escort services, the more problematic things that are allowed in this zoning. I feel very uncomfortable in trying to limit the right of the petitioner to have any sort of retail operation. I mean, it can be totally innocuous, and yes, I mean, it could be something that the neighborhood doesn't like, but my goodness, I mean, it could be a car wash or any number of other things that are on that list. And I really feel very constrained on limiting someone's property rights in this respect.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Norby. Now recognize Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, members of the council, fellow citizens, this is one of the rare times where I have not known what I was going to do up until the moment. And I'll try to explain why I'm mayor, and then I'll get a motion on the floor. I always say that I'm a native son of this community, and in 2009 I ran for the city council and said I'm going to speak up for the people. We had a meeting on March the 24th, and there were about 25 people who were in attendance at that meeting, and overwhelmingly, by show of hands, the neighbors who actually live in that community were in favor of moving forward with the rezoning for this reason. As was mentioned, there are 2 lots that is proposed to be rezoned. One lot is zoned residential single family. The other lot is already zoned highway business. And that gives me pause for concern. I mean, this isn't a situation where if we vote no, the petitioner will go away because he can already do what's in his God-given rights as a property owner zoned for highway business. Under highway business zoning, as Councilmember Light mentioned, you have things like boarding or rooming house, a cemetery, a club or lodge, a correctional institution, a motel, a vehicle storage yard, a salvage yard, a storage yard, a transmission tower, and there are so many things that can be harmful to this community. And, you know, when you're in leadership, and I'm a fairly young man, but when you're in leadership, you have to do what's right, even when it's not always popular. And I feel that if we don't rezone this particular item, we're being harmful to the community because that highway business moniker is something that I'm very afraid of. I can say that we have already removed through the planning board some of the uses we feel would be harmful to the community, and that was the compromise in the neighborhood meeting. Tattoo parlors, massage parlors, and all those things that were harmful to the community. As a compromise, we would remove those. Now, retail was on the table for discussion. After talking to the developer, after hearing from the community, retail couldn't be taken off the list because the deal would probably be killed, and I'm afraid that the developer will go and make it a vehicle storage yard. Now, I don't think he's a man that would do something like that, but we have to do what was necessary to protect the community. And I think rezoning this limits his ability to do whatever he wants to do with that property and sort of relegates him to offices, retail, and services A. With that being said, and it does give me pause for concern, but I feel what we're doing here is better. So I respect Mr. Wagner, I respect Mr. Van Eaton, who's a friend of mine, and also respect Ms. Highsmith, but I do feel like for protection of the community, I'm going to have to move approval of this item. Again, I have never voted against the best interest of the community, and I always hold a rezoning hearing in order to get the community out, hear their concerns, and do what's right for the neighborhood, and we did just that in this matter, and they were overwhelmingly in favor. I move for 1, adoption of the statement of consistency as set forth on page 105 of the agenda book, and 2, approval of W-3251.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Councilmember Bessie?
Yeah, I'd just like to note that I think that it's most significant here that the proposed rezoning actually reduces the uses that would have potentially harmful impacts on the adjacent neighborhoods. I think it would be potentially dangerously against the best interests of the nearby neighborhoods to leave the far larger list of potential uses as it stands now. I think particularly with the volunteered additional conditions that this is a positive movement for the neighborhood. And this is, if you look at the details of the petitions that we've been presented, this is a case where it's like a survey taker. How you ask the question is critical to the kind of answer you get. For the overwhelming majority of the signatures on the the petitions that we were presented, they were not given the information that the existing zoning is HB. I think if you ask the same folks, would you like to see additional restrictions placed on the potential uses of this property, that you would be likely to get most of those signers in favor of adding additional restrictions to the uses of the property. So I think this is an instance in which the informed neighbors, as Councilmember Taylor indicated, as Councilmember Light indicated at the meeting, most of them supported the proposal. So I'm going to vote in favor of the motion.
Thank you. Councilmember McIntosh?
This is a tough one because you have this inherent sort of clash between commercial interest and residential interest. But I think as our downtown becomes more vibrant and our inner city neighborhoods become more people want to live, I think you have to have some of those supporting businesses to encourage people to move back down into neighborhoods. I know there are neighborhoods around town that are struggling to have retail and would love to have retail. I know staff is working on some ideas, and we're tweaking some of the zoning designations to try to make those uses more compatible. I'm not real happy if this thing goes in long ways in a neighborhood that is where everything is oriented towards the front yard, and this is oriented long ways. But I do think it's an opportunity for the neighborhood to work with the developer to try to bring retail in that is supportive of the neighborhood, makes it more walkable, and makes it more desirable for people to live. I don't think retail in and of itself is a negative. I think it can be, but I think there's opportunity for the neighborhood to work with the developer to try to bring about a usage or a retail operation here that the community could support.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark?
Yeah. I was going to say, to pick to the neighborhood folks that are here, I think the restriction that I like is the picture of what he plans to build. These look like houses. They got a brick front. They got, I think those are called dormer windows. Is that right? On the second floor. Yeah. And to me, that's a lot different than what you typically think of as you think of retail. So I think it's a legitimate compromise. And it's been said earlier, you can always build a lot of other things here with the lot that you currently have.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I just want to say to all those who spoke, your concerns haven't fallen on deaf ears. I understand that there is what you believe to be a criminal element in the community, and we're working to address that. There were some concerns about the nitty-gritty. We stepped up, we put a plan in place, and we ensured that they were no longer harmful to the community. Because of that, the building is now vacant, and I want to say that this particular area is eligible for RUCA funding, which stands for Revitalizing Urban Commercial Areas. That's when the city comes in and works with a developer in a public-private partnership to bring about the kinds of economic development that you want in our community. So I'll say, we're working on getting a district police office in the area. We're working on the crime. We're working on the economic development, and we'll continue to do that, and you have my word. But this time, I think we're protecting the community by limiting the developer's ability to do what he wants and to do what's necessary in order to move the community forward.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Taylor.
Thank
you. Item 5.
Item 5, public hearing on zoning petition of Cleveland Avenue Christian Church from IP to LOS, property located on the south side of 10th Street between Cleveland Avenue and Mount Zion Place, located in the East Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition and approval of the site plan with staff recommendations. There's been a sufficient protest petition received.
We've also received a request to continue this item. I believe, from my understanding of Councilmember Montgomery, he'd like to go ahead with the public hearing tonight, and then I'll recognize him for whatever action he would like to take. Is that agreeable? All right, we'll begin and have the public hearing for the proponents. James Allison.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you briefly this evening. At this point, the Salvation Army is not comfortable withdrawing or moving forward. We need to pause to allow ourselves more time to explore and evaluate the situation and our options. Therefore, we respectfully request a 60-day continuance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else for the proponents at this point? All right, thank you. We'll now hear from the opponents. First, Marva Reed.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Marva Reed, 1434 North Cameron Avenue, 27105. We ask that you vote no on this rezoning. We think it's ironic and condescending that in 2006 we pleaded with this organization to build as something positive in our community, a Boys and Girls Club, to help us with our problematic youth. They turned us down and built somewhere else. Now we have come full circle, and they want to put something negative in our community. Northeast Winston Neighborhood Association was not made aware of most of the meetings concerning this. And according to the documentation, the community was mostly comprised of people that worked in this community, but they do not live in this community. So they are personally detached from the ills of the homelessness. And when the other neighborhood associations became fully aware of the details, they immediately changed their minds in approval for this. We ask that you vote no. The city has a pattern of sanitizing certain areas and negatively impacting other areas, which now nationally is backfiring in most cities, states around the nation. We have a master plan, and we ask that you be consistent with us for this area and ask that you adhere to it and ask that you vote no for this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Larry Woods.
Good evening. My name is Larry C. Woods. I'm Chief Executive Officer for the Housing Authority, Winston-Salem. Address is 500 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Zip code is 27101. I'm here to get some clarification. I want to appreciate Mrs. Marva Reeves' comment. One is this master plan that she's referred to has constantly referred to as the Housing Authority's master plan. I want to say that that is inaccurate. This plan is actually a spinoff of the Northeast East Area Plan. We took a subset of that plan and we decided to work with the community starting back in 2012. We used our own resources and we told the community we had no preconceptions about what the final plan would entail. But we met with elected officials, the mayor, we met with businesses, church leaders, civic leaders, schools. We met with the Airport Authority, Transportation Authority, the School Authority, universities, and the community at large. And we took all of their ideas, and in over 18 months charrette, we came up with what we call the Cleveland Avenue Neighborhood Transformation Plan. We submitted that to HUD and was able to receive $500,000 to move forward with the updating of this plan, so hopefully we can apply for an implementation plan. But this is a community plan, and it represents the dreams and aspiration of this community. Our biggest concern is that the planning board and this city council both approved of this plan. And we believe at this time a shelter is not compatible with the plan. We believe in trying to bring in new families to buy homes in this community. Having a shelter at this time will have a chilling effect. We believe also that it would deter the capital market from looking favorably on this community. And we are so early in the redevelopment of this community, we don't think this is the right time, the right location. And we're asking the city council to adhere to the will of this community. A week ago, there was a community meeting held at Rupert Bell. And it wasn't a majority. It wasn't a supermajority. It was a super extraordinary majority of the people who were overwhelmingly opposed of having a shelter in their community. The Housing Authority is but one voice. This has been pitted as the Housing Authority versus the Salvation Army, which is not the case. There's an ocean of voices behind me that hopefully you get them a chance to speak tonight and you will hear them echo exactly what they want for their community. My board held a special session 2 weeks ago. They discussed it and they voted unanimously to submit a protest petition to this committee so that there will be a super vote needed to pass this resolution. We have kept open dialogue with the Salvation Army, and we applaud the Salvation Army's good work, not just in this community, but around the city. But in this case, we believe that the community's dreams and aspiration outweigh the change of the zoning, and requesting that this city council vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Joanne Allen.
Joanne Allen, P.O. Box 284, zip code 27102. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying that once again, I have stated in the past that this current board, as well as present city council members, you all really do not have any foresight or vision. As long as we're talking about downtown, you have all the vision you can muster up. But when we talk about South Winston, East Winston, Northeast Winston, there is nothing. And you all make all these decisions, but you don't come and actually see what's really going on. And when the people speak, that's your job up here. I've said this before. Your job is to do what's right by the people. Not what's right for what you all think is right, but to do right by the people who elected you to be there. Once again, whether that was legally or illegally. Understand that. Also, all the people that sit on the city council, as far as the staff, the personnel, these individuals don't work for you. They work for all of these individuals out here. They work for the citizens of Winston-Salem. My point is this. I have touched pretty much every homeless shelter across the state of North Carolina. And I know for a fact that the homeless shelters can be built anywhere in Winston-Salem. Why are you all continuing with 8 Democrats up here? Why are you all continuing to just dump? And I don't mean it in a negative way, Major Allison, because I'm going to tell you what I told him at the last meeting. They can put it anywhere they want to. But you continue to make East Winston one of the poorest, which it is in the state as well as in the country of the United States. Do your job. Do it correctly, because trust me, when you sit there and make plans and you go back and forth because you've got friends over here or business associates over there, it's going to catch up with you eventually. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else in opposition? All right, seeing no one else, since you are requesting a continuance, I assume there'll be no rebuttal that you would want to do at this time. I'm going to leave the public hearing open and recognize Councilmember Montgomery. Would someone else want to speak in opposition? All right, you have about 7 minutes. If you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, good afternoon or evening. My name is Estella Brown, and I live at 829 North Cameron Avenue. That is a struggling area, and it's a lot of disparities. Now, I can understand everybody wants to have a decent place to stay. People want to be safe when they go in their doors at night. But if it should come to the Salvation Army providing housing, what other than housing would the people over in that area benefit from? You know, would someone or people be able to be trained to work there? Or would there be people brought from another area to be trained to work with the people who are moving there? And sometimes that area is totally forgotten. When I say totally, I feel like it's totally forgotten. But there are still people who live there, don't feel safe. And I know a lot of people who probably would be coming through the Salvation Army. They have just lost hope, you know, and you know, it really doesn't matter. There's a lot of traffic. And I just wonder if any of you ever just took the time just to ride through those streets, those neighborhoods. I'm not talking about daytime. I'm talking about over in the evening and at night, and actually see what actually goes on. You know, but I'm not knocking no one out of a place to stay. But I really don't feel like that would be the place to have a homeless shelter. You know, they need jobs and they need homes, and people need hope. And really, I'm a voice in my community. You know, it's not a lot of people who will speak up, but I don't mind speaking up. But it's just really not the place to have a homeless shelter.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Someone else? Oh, Ms. Terry.
Good evening,
Good evening.
members of the board, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief. I have met with the people from the Salvation Army about this, and I have listened to the community. And I stayed here this evening so I could come and have a word with you. And just let me begin by telling you a story.
Ms. Terry, may I interrupt? I just asked you to put your name and address on the record, please.
I'm so sorry.
We know who you are, but
I am Evelyn Terry, and my address is 1224 Reynolds Forest Drive, 27107.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I'll tell you a story. I'm working on feverishly a project in East Winston that is coming along well. And I'll set that aside just to say that in the process of the meetings and all of the things, a couple of the builders that you just cited today are extremely on board with me and working with me. But the reality about people that I've been bringing in to introduce to our community and what have you really shocks me because I never realized on a tour from a person who is intimately interested, because it does represent a vision for the Dreamland Park community of Winston-Salem. But a prominent person said, but who would want to live over here? And you know, it really broke my heart, because I was looking at a research map with a lot of infill development opportunity and other kinds of things like that. So I'm thinking in that direction. And then when I come and hear that several blocks over from some of the other people I know who have come back into their community to develop and live there, it really does sadden me, because it seems to me that there is such, I call it economic segregation. And the reality about disinvestment from the business community lends itself to that, because there is no critical mass that they see that can cause them to make the profit that they need to come into the community to do something that uplifts it. And the other thing I will say is that looking at the footprint of this community, Cleveland Avenue, and really I'm going from there to all the way to New Walkertown Road to Liberty Street, the whole 9 yards. I count the number of finance institutions, I count the number of food places, I count the number of places where there may be a place to get an ice cream cone or where you might be able to get a healthy sandwich, and I don't find them. That is a result of disinvestment and economic segregation. Don't do this to us. Let us find a way to revitalize and stabilize the community where we live and where we love, to be able to see children come outside and see in the mirror folks that they want to be like. That's what we're looking for. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
We have about a minute and a half for the we're not running until you get here, Joseph.
Mayor, members of council, my name is Jocelyn Johnson. My address is 2426 Edison Court, Winston-Salem. There are a number of people, although they may not be able to speak, well, I'll ask them, and you should have received an email from me today stating my position. I see nods of here. Great. So you know that I am not in favor of this. I don't think it brings value to our community. I hope that the Salvation Army, knowing our concerns as they listened to the residents talk on last week, would have withdrawn their petition. We say to you, and there are a number of people who are out there who won't come up, but stand, please. We say to you, our hands are up. Don't shoot us in the back, for we want to have economic development in our communities. We want it to be fair, and we want to be just like everybody else because our community is growing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thanks, Joyce.
About 40 seconds, please.
Good evening. Amber Baker, 322 George Big Red Court, Winston-Salem, 27101. I would simply say that currently I reside at Kensington Village, which was a wonderful opportunity to take a property that was once riddled with crime and was an eyesore for the city and has since been redeveloped. And I would say that I am now looking to purchase in East Winston because I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. And so as a professional, I realize that the way we will continue to build that community is when people like myself purchase in that neighborhood. So I would say that we look at the concentration of shelters already on that end of the city. You have the Salvation Army shelter already on Trade Street. You have Samaritan Ministries also located in that area. So I would ask the committee and I would ask the council to consider the saturation of where we're placing our shelters. And as we continue to rebuild East Winston, we look at what we're putting there as people like myself look to reinvest in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Certainly appreciate all the comments. Our time is up for that portion of it. I will keep the public hearing open and then recognize Councilmember Montgomery if he'd like to make a motion.
Make a comment and then I'll make this motion.
All right.
We'd like to make a statement specifically in reference to the to this request that stands in terms of continuance of this item. The request came forward from the petitioners to continue this item for 60 days to allow for additional opportunity for dialogue and conversation within the community. I do state that the Salvation Army, in the fact of making this request, did have individuals that they had prepared to bring to speak on this item, but because they had advised in terms of continuing the item, many of those individuals were not present to speak on that side. But we have heard from the other side of this statement in terms of the presentations from community and wanted to respect the fact that there were people who were coming in tonight and wanted to be heard, to allow you all to be heard tonight, and so respecting you all in your time to come out and be a part of the process as this public hearing will stay open as we come back and have a continuance of this item. And so with that being stated, I move to continue W3256 until July 20th.
Second. Moved and second to continue the item. Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, just a few comments. First off, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Your comments are appreciated. I do want to make just a few quick comments. First off, I do want to thank the Salvation Army for what they do for our community. They help those who are literally at the very bottom of the rung. There was a comment made that they did not build a rec center here, but they did build it in a neighborhood that needed it as well. It's out, I guess that's just east of Winston-Salem State University.
New Walkertown Road.
And Reynolds Park Road.
And Reynolds Park Boulevard is what I'm thinking of. Number two, just a quick comment. Since I have been on this council, what the city has done in this area, just recently we have moved offices into the old Winston Mutual Life Insurance building that was empty to try to help it out. We have also done the financing on both the shopping center, and y'all help me, I guess that's New Walkertown Road and MLK, where there's a Food Lion. We financed that, and there's a much older shopping center across the street on MLK. We finance that as well. So I think the city has tried to do some things there. Last comment, I will say in my 14 years on this council, I have learned that no one wants a homeless shelter in their neighborhood. I remember when we rezoned, Mr. Montgomery is the executive director of the Bethesda Center, and we rezoned it to increase its size. And at that time, there was a lot of mixed feelings there, and at that time we did adopt an ordinance to restrict how closely they can be. And I think it's 1,500 feet, something like that. We also did rezone, as you know, the Samaritan Ministries built a new facility right behind their current one, which is now empty. Very, very nice building. But at the end of the day, it is still a homeless shelter, and I do appreciate what the folks say there. The challenge we have as a community, and I will say this, I do not know the answer to this, but nobody wants a homeless shelter, or for that matter, a group home, get the same complaint on group homes in their neighborhood, but they're needed. Where do those, and this particular one is for basically single women and children, where do they go if we do not have a shelter? I do give one day a year to the Samaritan Ministries as part of my Christian stewardship, and I know those folks have nowhere else to go. But I don't know where to put it. But I do hope in this 60 days that those folks up here that are working on this and those folks in the audience can hopefully get together and try to come up with some answer, because it is certainly a problem that needs to be addressed. But at the same time, and I'll go on the record, I don't want it in my neighborhood either. So what do you do? I don't know, but I hope that the parties involved will talk and see if there is some place, wherever that may be, that this would work. Thank you.
Councilman Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, want to applaud the citizens that came out tonight. I grew up with 601 North Claremont. For those that know what Claremont was, it's Martin Luther King, right where the CVS is. The one thing that we are seeing now, and we've been seeing it for the past 5 to 10 years, is the concentration of the people and the folks that need the most concentrated with the neighborhoods that need the most. And, you know, it's no affront to what the good that we do here in Winston, the organizations that do this. But you have to understand, just like what you see in Baltimore, you can't keep, and even though we know we have to help people, but you can't keep putting all the help people with the poor people, with the people who are economically, you know, disadvantaged. You can't do that, because what it does is it doesn't give the neighborhoods a chance to develop into something sustainable economically, investment, hope, the people. You know, if you're a child, don't get me wrong, and you grow up and all you see is poor people and drug addicts and people not working and people doing crime and people hanging out, then what do you think that child is going to become? I say for me and mine, you know, I grew up here in Winston. I love Winston. I said today, you know, for the good work that you do, and people that see me on Facebook, they know I say that, like the good work. You need to put the good work somewhere else besides where it's been put the past few years. If we went by data alone and showed the density of help organizations in the urban core of African American communities, it would, if it was a business plan, it would be a moot point, because it wouldn't work. We're saying, for me, we need to think about putting the good work that you do, and the city, I'm sure, and the county will work with you to get the right bus routes and the other folks to where they need to get to, but it needs to be in other communities such as Stratford Road, such as Renolda Road, such as Hawthorne Road, such as Haynes Mall Boulevard. All those places that if you riding during the day when the buses are running, you see a lot of Latino Hispanics, you see a lot of African Americans catching those buses from the hospitals and where they work. I'm saying that we just need to move the shelters to where the routes go, and we'll do that because we are redoing the routes. But I think, you know, for me and mine, I will not, just because I won't support it, because we got too many shelters for the neediest of the needy in the needy neighborhoods. We need to move them to the neighborhoods so they can see what other people look like and get a perspective of, you know what, I want to get my GED. I want to go to college. I want to go to work. I want to own a business. And that's just my 2 cents, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Montgomery, you want to have sorry, Councilman Burke. She'll defer.
Yes, thank you. Mayor, members of the sitting here, and those of you who are here, I want to say to all of you how much I thank you. Now, you don't have to sing to this choir here. Right. If you go back and check the minutes, I have been one of the elected officials strongly say we have too many undesirable activities east of 52. In fact, I called the city manager, and I'm going to have this put on the so that you can read about some things we've done and some things we need to do. Housing, sitting in here today, I probably would say one person who probably would be an authority on how many people came to City Hall early on, looking at the housing conditions that we have, and that's Mr. Ernie Pitt with the Chronicle. He faithfully would be down documenting so that the people east of 52 could see how poor we were doing as a city. When I first became elected, I want you to know this city hall did not mirror this community. And today, when I drove up Patterson Avenue, Liberty Street, as soon as I got New Walkertown Road, as soon as I got to east of 52, it was not clean as the other side of the city. I've said to the city manager, I get up in the mornings, I love east of 52. Nobody's going to make me leave east of 52. I just want you to join like you are here this evening with us when we're down here speaking about how we think our city ought to look. When I get up and I leave where I live, go down Carver School Road, I see the people who's employed don't keep my street clean like they should. I drive on to New Walkertown Road, and I go on to Martin Luther King. Then I head towards Stratford Road, or sometimes I visit Arbor Acres and go further out 25th Street to Arbor Acres. When I go up Kent, Renola Road, Country Club Road, they clean your area better than they clean mine. You're not responsible for that, and I know you're not, because you've been a very honest, fair person on this council and have spoken and joined us. You're a good Republican. You're a fine man. And I used to have two other good Republicans, Robert Northerton and Jack Kavanaugh, that supported what ought to be done in East Winston because it affects the whole city. When you let one part go down, it does not help. All of the money that we have spent. And I said to the city manager this morning, and I want you all to be serious and hear this. A lady said to me, my little boy said to me, downtown is not for us. And I told her to tell him, yes, downtown is for all of us. And I want you to know that's how people feel. Whenever you go downtown, lunchtime, you see, you know who we see. When you go down, when work is over, we know who we see. And to me, until we change and mirror this community to look more like the diversity that we have, then it's not going to work. People will always feel uncomfortable with downtown or with what we do in Winston-Salem. But I want to say to you, we need you. We need you to come and support and say how you think your city ought to look and what you think we ought to be doing. Patterson Avenue is a sad place. Every day I speak to the city manager because every day I'm on Patterson Avenue and parts of Liberty Street. And I don't see how we can feel good with ourselves. We who have looked at the downtown and we need to put these things down there. But then when you come and you see how Patterson looks, people who have their homes there, the Habitat homes that are there, these people made a lot of sacrifice. And when their children get up in the morning and they see the homeless, and then they see people walking all day not working, that's not a good example. And I say, we will have to do better. And it's going to be up to you. Now, when Councilwoman Jocelyn came up and spoke, and Councilwoman Terry, I'm sorry she's not here, they too sat on this council. They've been a part of it. And at times when I spoke about certain things, it seemed to have gone to deaf ears. Go back and check the minutes. I've been one of the hardest speaking people about ought to be fair and how we are perceived by people, not only in Winston-Salem, but around. And I say, Mayor and members of the council, I think we're the first ones to say we're going to have to do better.
Thank you. Councilmember Bessie?
It's my understanding that the need for temporary emergency shelter for families with children outstrips the capacity. And that's what we're looking at here. I'd like to, this may be a bit outside the normal process, but I'd like to invite the Salvation Army to submit the particulars that it would need for a facility to all the members of the council, along with any information that you've made a preliminary exploration for alternative sites. See if any of us can help you identify alternate sites that might work.
Thank you, Mr. Betsy. Councilor Montgomery, do you have a comment? Councilor Montgomery.
I was warning. I was going to reserve some comments, but based upon the dialogue that was had, I feel it prudent to state several things. One, when we look at this conversation and we hear from the community, we see what we've seen today, I think that this is the hallmark of what citizens' participation in community looks like, is when individuals have a concern, have an issue about something, they come out and they voice that concern. Whether it turns out in the manner in which they desire to or not, is the fact of being able to have the platform to articulate that manner. And when we look at this issue today and where we are, particularly with this rezoning, I think there is an overarching, larger issue that we're talking about and discussing that really has very little to do with what we're talking about with the rezoning of this property. It has to do with specifically what has already been articulated by other council members, particularly when we look at our community that we talk about east of 52 and the investment that has and has not been made within that community. And what we see today is individuals who are passionate about that and want to make sure that this council and others understand and know the desire of community and what the community wants to see happening within the confines and the boundaries of that neighborhood and community. And I believe that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we hear that even beyond this specific conversation around the rezoning, because the comments and concerns here go far beyond what we're talking about with this rezoning. It's talking about economic development. It's talking about investments. It's talking about jobs. It's talking about how we decrease the concentration of poverty in our communities. And that does not end with this conversation, but that is only a portion of the larger picture. So my press upon all that are here today is that let this not be the last time we come together to have this conversation, but let us join together to make sure that what we're talking about as a neighborhood and a community actually happens and comes to fruition, and that we work diligently within our community to make sure that we put the pressures, not just here on City Hall, but from state government and federal government, to make sure that we see what needs to take place within our community, because that is going to be the only way that we see what needs to be happening in our community. From the start of this conversation with the Salvation Army, when they approached in reference to this here over the last couple months, my statements to the Salvation Army has been is that it is going to be incumbent upon understanding and making sure that the community understands what's going to happen in order for them to see what they want to see happen in this community. And if that cannot happen, then that will be the basis of what we look towards. But I do believe that over the course of conversation and dialogue, that sometimes there are opportunities and things that can come together with individuals having conversation and discourse. That's why I'm in favor of having the continuance to allow for that continuing dialogue and conversation. But we cannot forget those things that have been articulated and those concerns that have been brought forward, because those are important issues, and those are issues that I believe that every member of this council needs to understand and take to heart when we consider what we do and where we invest. Yes, we've made investments in other parts of the community. Yes, we've situated offices within our community. Yes, we've made investments in housing around it, but that is just the tip of the iceberg, and we have to do a whole lot more than what we have done if this neighborhood and community is to become what people have seen it be in the past and what we all know it can be in the future. So I say thank you to all who are here tonight. Thank you to the Salvation Army for the good work that they do, and even more so, thank you to the community that came out to be a part of this conversation. And I advise you and ask you to stay a part of the dialogue and the conversation.
We have a motion to continue this item to the May 20th meeting, and July 20th meeting. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. And the item is continued to July 20th. All right, item number 6.
Item 6, public hearing on zoning petition of Westside Baptist Church from RS9 to IPL, property located on the east side of Peacehaven Road, north of McGregor Road, located in the West Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the council chamber who is opposed to this particular rezoning? Don't believe I see anybody, so I will declare the public hearing closed and recognize Councilmember Clark.
I would like a presentation on this because this is a little different animal than we normally see, Mr.
Okay, Mr. Norby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You see here the property shown in yellow. It is on Peacehaven Road. This is actually right near McGregor Road, which is south of US 421. You can see in the lower left corner that the proposed western beltway, if and when it does come, would be coming right through that area there. This is the aerial photo showing the site outlined in yellow. You see a residential neighborhood, single-family residential neighborhood to the south, some single-family homes to the north, otherwise sort of scattered, undeveloped area around it. This is the subject property from Peacehaven Road itself. You see a large parking lot, and then the church in the further back in the property. And then this is a sign that was erected a few months ago, electronic message board sign. And this is looking south on Peacehaven Road from the site, looking down around the curve there where McGregor Road comes into Peacehaven. Peacehaven kind of splits off to the right. This all started from a complaint that was received from a citizen about a near wreck on Peacehaven Road in that vicinity. The citizen said was caused by the brightly lit electronic sign that was recently installed. Zoning enforcement investigated the complaint, discovered that the sign had actually been installed without a permit. The property presently zoned RS9. RS9 zoning district does not allow electronic signs, even for churches, but the IP district does. A number of churches are zoned IP, so the church in turn proposed rezoning to IP, which would then make the sign legally permitted. The only requested use that they're asking for is church or religious institution neighborhood. That's the smaller size. It's less than 600 seats, and that would accommodate the existing church. The IPL zoning that they requested, we believe that's a reasonable request at this location. It would permit the existing electronic message board sign to remain on the site if approved. April 9th, the City County Planning Board held a public hearing. The petitioner and a representative of the adjacent neighborhood spoke in favor of it. There was no opposition that appeared or spoke, and the Planning Board, after discussion, recommended approval of the request as presented.
Any questions for Mr. Norby? Councilman Light.
So there was no comment from the people who say that they're blinded by the sign?
They sent us an email, which is included in your packet there, and we let the person who complained know when the planning board hearing was, and also let them know when this hearing was, and they did not appear at the meeting or say anything.
Thank you.
Councilor Bessie?
Yes, Mr. Norby, do you have to get a permit for this type of sign wherever it's put up?
Yes, you have to get a sign permit whenever you're putting up a new sign, and then it also has to specify if it's an electronic sign, because there's some rules that apply to electronic signs, like a 2-hour change rate to the sign itself.
Have we made it a point to let local contractors who install this kind of sign know about that requirement?
Yes, I believe the local sign contractors know that. I'll let Chris Murphy elaborate if that. I don't know why the sign contractor in this case did not.
Mr. Murphy, if you want to comment on that.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Council. Yes, we do, as we have gone through the process with the sign ordinance. Of course, that was almost 8 years now, 8 years ago now, but we worked extensively with them to make sure they were informed of the new sign ordinance. We have a group of local sign contractors that secure permits through our office all the time. There aren't any sign contractors out there that don't know that permits are required.
I may have a question for the petitioner after.
All right. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Murphy. I'd recognize Councilman Clark. If you have a question or...
Yeah, just a quick question to that point. Are there repercussions to anyone for putting the sign up without a permit? And if so, would that be to the contractor or to the church?
The notice of violation was sent to the church, and the conversation was with the pastor, I believe, but Chris may know a little bit more about that.
In your adopted fee schedule, work that's done without permits, whenever they come in to get the permits after they've been sent their notice, they're double feed. So they'll have to pay a double fee on the sign permit whenever they come in to secure it.
Which ballpark in this case would have been a couple $100?
More than likely a couple $100. It's based on cost, but I mean, even a $10,000 sign, you're not going to get much over minimum cost.
Thank you.
Another question actually from Mr. Murphy. What ballpark is the cost of installing an electronic message board of the size in this case?
I would probably need to defer that to the petitioner. I know the sign itself probably costs $8,000 to $10,000. Beyond that, there's probably not a lot of additional costs as far as the installation. You still have your footings, you still have your electrical that has to be run, but perhaps they could better address that.
Thank you. Councilman Clark.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Reverend Dixon to come forward, please. He is here. He is the Reverend, excuse me, he's the pastor. I'm using my Episcopal term instead of my Baptist term. He is the pastor at this church. Mr. Dixon, could you comment on, I know you and I have spoken about you're going to try to take some steps to reduce the brightness of the sign, some other things. Can you kind of talk about this a minute?
Certainly. My name is Robert Dixon. I live at 265 North Gordon Drive here in Winston-Salem. The proposal that we were given by Everett Sign Company included a fee for permits and fees. Seeing that, we assumed they knew that such things were needed and they would take care of it. It came to our attention after the city notified us that we had failed to do that they had had a failure. In speaking with them about that and getting this process started, we've never heard from anyone who's driven by our property and seen the sign and been bothered by it. The only comments we've ever received about the sign were positive ones. That being said, we spoke with the president of the sign company, and he indicated to us that yes, the brilliance of that sign can be adjusted. We've not had an opportunity to do that yet because you folks thought it might be best for us to turn the sign off until this was resolved, and we've done that. So we're willing to have the brilliance of the sign reduced, adjusted, to help it to be more effective at communicating and presenting a positive image of our church. The last thing we want to do is offend or pester the people driving by our church and creating ill will between them and us. So we're willing to do whatever we can to reduce the brilliance and do everything we can to comply with all the city ordinances in regard to keeping the sign on premises.
Thank you. There may be some questions from other folks.
Well, I think you asked the question specifically of him. Anybody have a question of the pastor?
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilman Best.
Pastor Dixon, thank you for the information about the contractor. And certainly I would have made a similar assumption that if they were including in their fee a cost for the permits, that that might be something that they would be working on, or at least letting you know what's involved. And I'll speak after the meeting with our inspection staff and see if anything can be done to communicate with the company about their failures in this event. My questions for you are you aware that the city code limits you to changing it every 2 hours?
Today I am.
Okay.
The day that the sign was powered on for the first time, I was not.
But do you have any trouble with that?
Certainly not.
Okay. And I think the information in the record that we have is there was an evening accident or near accident involving a distracted driver who was saying that the sign was involved. I don't know if this is appropriate as a volunteered condition, perhaps a diminished brilliance of the sign in evening hours. Would that be something that you could work with?
I would certainly think we can. We would certainly be willing to. And I would think that the sign company would be able to help us in adjusting that. I don't want to bore you with too much detail, but the way we create the signs, we create an image that we simply display on the board. And I think it would be possible for us to create evening images where we could put a light gray transparent cover to the image so that when it's displayed in the evening, it would not be as brilliant as that same image would be in the daytime when the sun's beating down on it and we need every bit of brilliance we can for people to be able to see in the ambient lighting. But I think there are certainly ways we can adjust that. We would feel terrible if our sign was indeed in some way responsible for someone having an accident on that road.
Sure. Thank you.
Councilman Clark, we get a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. If it's a second, I will comment on it. I move for one, adoption of the statement of consistency as set forth on page 201 of the agenda book, and two, approval of W 3260. And I'll comment if there's a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second.
Comment. First of all, I think this is a legitimate mistake. These folks are not in the sign business. It's a very small church, as you saw. They paid a very reputable sign company in town, one that I'm familiar with, and probably one of the large ones in town, pay for them to take care of things, and they didn't. I think if the church had come to us first and asked for IP zoning, which most churches that I know of are, we would have done it without any hesitation, and then they could have just gotten the sign permit and gone on. I do think they have tried and are trying to be good citizens, in that they're willing to tone it down at night and work with the sign company on that, and he's aware of the repetition limitations and all that. I will say there has not been an accident. I did get the same person contacted me that sent the email, but the church has contacted all the folks that live around, and everybody seems to be happy with them. So with that, that's why I made the motion.
Councilman Montgomery.
I had a question and then a comment. It was of staff in reference to the ordinance as it stands within the sign. Is there any requirement based upon those individuals who are doing that installation as it stands now to notify, have any dialogue with those individuals who's doing the work in the sense of whether or not they are zoned the way that they're supposed to be zoned based upon the permitting process as they are now?
I may not be understanding the question, but since they do have to get a sign permit before installing a sign, that gives the staff the opportunity to check the zoning, so that would have been caught had the sign company come to us in advance, ask for a permit. We would have been able to hold it at that point and advise them you don't have the correct zone for that.
Well, that's my question. You answered it without answering directly, specifically more so that sign company coming in to make that installation, the requirement based upon them to make sure in installing that there that it meets the standard that it's supposed to, which doesn't exist, that there's nothing that requires them to do that as it stands now. Because the reason I ask that is because this seems like we've had a couple issues, not necessarily with the zoning, but pieces dealing with the sign ordinance and others that we've had to deal with here since my time on council that we've had to address. And one thing I'd be interested to see is to make sure when you have individual organizations such as a church, and I think the last time we dealt with this, it was a church again that had a sign that was installing a sign that there were some issues there, that they're going out rightfully so, attempting to get the signage and not being made aware of some of the issues. The last time I think it was specifically the sign ordinance and what they were able to do with the sign, and then now it's the fact of the improper permitting and not being in the proper zoning category, which says to me that there may be something missing in between those who are installing and those who are requesting, who what they believe going through the right process, but in some way there's something missing there.
Councilmember Montgomery, I will say that, and Chris can back me up on this, but since that first circumstance that you might be talking about, I believe in all cases where a petitioner, where a sign company has come in and got a sign permit, it is clearly stated on the permit that they have like a 2-hour change limit on it. It was on the one represented. Yes. So that is, they have made a concerted effort, if they come in and get a permit, to make clear what the rules are.
Well, and my thing is just protective of community. How, and this is something we can have some more dialogue in the committee level, but protecting the community who's using what they believe the right channels of going to get someone who is certified to do the work, but they're not doing their due diligence, and now you have this situation here, which is something that we need to look at in terms of how we deal with that in the future. And I would hope that one of the committee chairs would be willing to have that conversation.
Councilman Burke.
Yes, we spent an awful lot of time with signs. Do we have a little booklet or something where we have the directions on if a church or any group would like to have a sign where when they come to our office there's a little booklet that you can give them? So what we're saying, because if you knew how, and also I want you to pull the minutes from our sign ordinance, how many meetings we had, how much input, because we spent hours after hours.
To answer your question, Madam Mayor Pro Tem Burke, we actually have a whole section of our website devoted to signs. We have handouts that are specifically designed just for the sign ordinance. Now, we don't break it down into church signs or electronic signs, but we do have information. It contains helpful hints on how to go through the process. It includes the application process as well as the application itself. And then we have, because we serve multiple jurisdictions, the county sign ordinance is different than the city sign ordinance. We have the city sign ordinance, the county sign ordinance, as well as the Walkertown, Clemens, and Louisville sign ordinances, all located on our website for folks to be able to use, as well as handouts in our office.
Thank you. Just for the record, we did a very thorough work with this, making sure everybody understood it. So I didn't think it was something that was just done and not thought about.
Councilmember Bessie?
Yeah, I'm going to support Councilmember Clark's motion. I think that there are things that can be done to address the specific problems in this case, and that the petitioner is prepared to work on them. I would like to make some observations. Mr. Norby, could you put back up or could you put up the map that shows the zoning and the case in that context? No. Do you have Southwest Suburban Area Plan? Do you have that page?
No, I don't have that on the slide, but let me see if I can.
I tell you what, leave that up there. If you see the property there marked in yellow, the property included in the zoning request, that's a small church in an otherwise in an area that otherwise is exclusively used for low density residential. So you can see why a bright sign at night is going to stand out in that situation more than it would on, say, there you go, more than it would on, say, South Creek Parkway or Peters Creek Parkway, where you've got a zillion other things, or Business 40, where you've got those bright billboards at night, the ones that are electronic, huge signs, and I think are extremely distracting to drivers. I think they were a problem statewide. The ordinance as we have it is not perfect, but it is the product of a long, as Mayor Pro Tem Burke pointed out, process of multiple compromises, trying to not be overly restrictive, but trying to address the public's interest in having as good looking a community as possible, and in dealing with specific transportation hazards from distracted driving, exacerbated by quickly changing signage. And we have an enforcement and implementation process that's not perfect, and in part because the city doesn't have any real way to ensure that the businesses that do this for a living are in fact conveying to the end buyer, the end user, all of the restrictions that apply and why they apply, and the order that you have to do these things. And we're getting community institutions like small churches that are making what are, for them, are very expensive purchases without knowing all the restrictions that will apply, or without realizing that in this case that a permit fee apparently didn't mean that the company was actually going to apply for and get the permit before they put in this very expensive purchase for a small institution. I think we can do some work on how we might ensure that kind of communication breakdown happens less frequently. There are ways that we can resolve the difficulties in this case, and I think that petitioner is committed to pursuing those. Thank you. But let's also work on this for the long term. Thank you.
We have a motion to approve this rezoning. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilman Clark.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Norby.
If I could just mention something that would be relevant to both Councilmember Burke's comments and Councilmember Bessie's comments. As you know, you adopted that sign ordinance with a 15-year amortization period, by which time all the non-conforming signs that were made non-conforming by that ordinance need to come into compliance. We are now about halfway through that time period. We've got about 7 years left. So we are planning this year, hopefully around mid-year, to send a courtesy notice to all businesses and property owners who would likely be in locations where they would have to be concerned about that. And just as a courtesy, letting them know, reminding them about the sign ordinance, letting them know about the 15-year amortization period, how much time is left, give them some basic information about the sign ordinance, and then direct them to our inspection staff who will have a lot more information and assistance to help them. So we want to get out in front of the curve to kind of go directly to those businesses there. We'll also let the sign companies know, but just like you stated, we're hoping that with that direct communication, we can get everyone in the loop.
Item number 7.
Item 7, continuation of public hearing on zoning petition of S&H Investment Group Incorporated from HBS to HBL, property located north of West Clemensville Road along the northbound entrance ramp to Peters Creek Parkway, located in the South Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Council members, you see in front of you a letter requesting a withdrawal of this zoning petition. I would recognize Councilmember Light.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move for approval of the request to withdraw W3233.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 8.
Item 8, continuation of public hearing on zoning petition of John Raymond Oliver Jr. from LB to HBL, property located on the northeast corner of New Walkertown Road and Waterworks Road, located in the East Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
My understanding is the petitioner has modified his request on this. Mr. Norby, could you comment on it before we call for the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The petitioner, knowing what has happened, being advised what has happened in terms of the case law on this, has agreed to remove sweepstakes as a permitted use. So it would basically be only for a shopping center small, and as you see on the screen, excluding a number of other uses as well. So, but adding the restriction on no sweepstakes, electronic sweepstakes uses.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Norby, on that? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the council chamber who is opposed to this rezoning? All right, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Come forward. Sorry, I didn't see you back there, Ms. Johnson.
And I wasn't here when the sheets were out. Again, I'm Jocelyn Johnson, 2426 Edison Court. The concern that we have is that initially it was with the sweepstakes, and we realized what has happened with that. But recently, it has become an outdoor open market, flea market, and we want to make sure that that use is not permitted, and that if there's anything in the classifications that allows that kind of activity to occur at the intersection of Waterworks and New Walkertown Road, that it does not occur.
Mr. Norby, would you comment on that?
One of the uses that the petitioners agreed to exclude is what you see there, the next to the last line, outdoor display retail.
And how will we ensure that that is taken care of?
Well, the petitioner would be subject to zoning enforcement if there is any signs of that coming back. And I understand that there's been some actions lately to cease that activity outside.
As I recall, the write-up, there was also some concerns about closing one of the curb cuts and also to do some repair to the parking lot. Is that still in place?
I don't know about the parking. There is a condition that is that states that if there is any expansion of the footprint of any existing buildings or any permits for new buildings, the developer would have to obtain a driveway permit, and the improvements for that would be consolidating the 3 existing driveways into 2 or fewer.
And the other concern is that the signage needs to be monumental signs and not have those floating signs that seriously caused an accident, of which there were some injuries involved.
And there's a condition in there on freestanding signage shall not exceed 8 feet in height and 50 square feet in maximum copy area. So those are the only signs that would be permitted.
And my request to you would be that it would be changed to having monumental signs and not having any freestanding signs at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition? All right. I'll now close the public hearing and recognize the Councilmember Burke.
Yes, I was going to say Ms. Johnson is exactly right. It did create a lot of problems there, and it was called to the attention for the city to go out, and Mr. Brooks went out. The mistake that we made, though, when they went out, they spoke to the people who were renting from the shopping center. But then when they sent the letter directly to the owner, then that's when that was removed, because there were accidents, there were complaints, and it did create a tension. And that corner is so serious. You got a lot of traffic going there, school buses, regular cars, and trucks. So whatever Mrs. Johnson mentioned, Mr. Norby, I think that we need to make sure that some of those things will be addressed. Now, I don't know how we're going to address the monuments. Would you have to speak with the owner? What would you?
I think the petitioner would have to agree to a further condition limiting it to monuments, monument signs only.
Right. Well, I'm going to recognize Councilmember Montgomery if he's ready for a motion.
Based upon the items that have been presented and on this item in reference to removal of the sweepstakes, the use here, and particularly the issue that arose here over the course of the last several months in regards to some of the outdoor retail that's there, and that specifically being something that is prohibited in our inspections, and city staff are in constant work and making sure that that's something not there. I move for adoption of the statement of consistency as set forth on page 273 of the agenda book and approval of W3239.
Second. Motion second. Any further discussion? Councilmember Montgomery, go ahead.
They are continuing in terms of this particular site is a very important site, particularly when we look in our community and what's taking place there. That this intersection at Newark Town Road and Waterworks Road is a very important intersection, and what takes place there is going to be very important to the overall growth and development to our community as a whole. And so I think that any additional issues that we may have here, I think is very incumbent that we'll continue to work on rectifying any of those issues moving forward.
Good, thank you. All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 9.
Item 9, ordinance amending chapters A and B of the Unified Development Ordinances to create regulations for urban agriculture, UDO 257, proposal of City County Planning and Development Services staff, recommended by the Planning Board and Community Development Housing General Government Committee.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council.
Good evening.
This is a petition of the Planning and Development Services staff, and it would create regulations for urban agriculture within the city limits of Winston-Salem. Just as a little background, I'll explain to you the current regulations relating to standalone agriculture in the city. First of all, the need for revising our existing regulations for growing food in urban and suburban areas was identified in Legacy 2030, our comprehensive plan that you all adopted a few years ago, and has been recently echoed by the Forsyth Community Food Consortium and other citizens, I know several of whom are in the chambers this evening. Agriculture as a standalone use is currently only allowed within the city limits on large lot residential zoning districts, and then only with Board of Adjustment approval. Now the challenge is most of the city is zoned RS7, RS9, RS12, basically single-family districts between 7,000 and 12,000 square feet in lot size, which is far below the minimum of 3 acres that the ordinance currently requires for agriculture. So it's technically on the books, but it's extremely difficult to do in its current configuration. Now, most agriculture within the city limits is what's known as an accessory use currently. That would be, for example, if you had a church or health center that might have a community garden, or if you grow fruit, vegetables in your own backyard. All of those would be accessories. So what the proposed ordinance would do is it would revise and clarify regulations so that in addition to the accessory gardens that I mentioned and the large-scale agriculture that's allowed but is very difficult to do, the proposed ordinance would also allow smaller standalone agriculture in neighborhoods on individual lots. And staff believes that the proposed ordinance standards should minimize any potential impacts that agriculture could have on residential areas, and I'll go through what those standards are. So just in a little more detail, the proposed amendment would allow urban agriculture in all residential zoning districts, again, through that Board of Adjustment special use permit process. This review would have a public hearing, so any concerned neighbors could come out and have their concerns heard by the Board of Adjustment. There would be no minimum acreage requirement because, again, that's what's keeping agriculture from taking place in the city currently, is those 3-acre minimum lot sizes. We are proposing that any agricultural cultivation should be set back 5 feet from adjoining properties, and that's to basically protect people on any side of the proposed agriculture. As any of you who've done backyard gardening know, if you had something right on the property line, in order to dig those furrows or things of that nature, you'd have to be affecting your property that adjoins you, so that's where this came from. Parking isn't required automatically, but if you're proposing a large operation, the Board of Adjustment may require parking on a case-by-case basis, but generally we feel that on-street parking would be sufficient, or folks would just walk from their homes if it's in a residential neighborhood. And lastly, a $25 fee is proposed for review of this urban agriculture. That's the same as the review fee that's for backyard chickens and other agriculture already, so we felt that was consistent. This ordinance would also change the rules for how agriculture would be allowed in commercial areas within the city. It would broaden it so that urban agriculture would be allowed with a staff zoning permit in many non-residential commercial districts, industrial districts. So if someone wanted to do an agricultural operation like this, they wouldn't have to have a public hearing with the Board of Adjustment. They just go to our inspection staff and get that staff review. Additionally, I want to point out that indoor agriculture, such as hydroponics, which I know some of the council members have a special interest in, and food processing operations would also be allowed in industrial zoning in manufacturing A and manufacturing B. So the planning board did have a public hearing on this item in March. Several citizens spoke in favor of the ordinance at the public hearing. Several more emailed the board their comments, and the board did recommend this ordinance to you all unanimously. The Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee also recommended this ordinance last month to the full council. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have of staff at this time.
Mr. Erickson? Mr. Bessie?
I am embarrassed to have to admit I didn't think of this question during the committee discussion. Is there any application of our tree save ordinance to agricultural operations?
That is a question I will ask Mr. Murphy to see if he has any clarification on that.
Yes. The reason it belatedly occurred to me is under the circumstances, what we're looking at is encouraging urban gardens in essence, which is a good thing. But there are circumstances when what you've got are small lots that are have nice older trees around them, and that could be a bad effect on the neighborhood to knock those down to get a little more sunlit area for the garden. So there's going to be some difficult trade-offs potentially there.
And just to give a little background on that while he's researching that, I remember when we did the tree ordinance, we kind of structured it so that the district residential standards would be geared more towards residential subdivision activity and things of that nature. And on the other hand, the commercial regulations would be, or non-residential regulations would be geared more towards commercial development. So this is kind of, at least without having the ordinance in front of me, it seems like kind of a gray area. So hopefully we can clarify that for you shortly.
Any other questions for Mr. Erickson while we're waiting? Mr. Clark?
I saw here a comment from the children's home, and I do know they grow food out there. Would that be an accessory use because that's a fruit?
That would be an accessory use because it's customary to their principal use.
Yeah. So this would have to be a purely vacant lot that someone wanted to grow something on.
That's really what would be the beneficiary of this ordinance, and as once you open it up to the public comments, I'm sure you'll hear that, as we have, that a lot of citizens are interested in having agriculture on vacant lots within neighborhoods, and that's really the missing piece in what we allow currently.
Mr. Murphy may be ready to respond.
This is a quick, down and dirty answer. I reserve the right to study this a little bit more, but from what I've found, if you're talking about individual lots in a residential setting, it would be exempt from the tree save because they are specifically exempted. Individual residential lots platted prior to the adoption of this ordinance are exempt, and then once they're platted through this ordinance, they only have to make it through the point of platting, and then they're exempt once the streets are turned over to the city, so they would be exempt also. In commercial situations, if an area was disturbed that would require a grading permit greater than 10,000 square feet is what triggers a grading permit, then they would. Now, what we would probably work with them on would be if they could do alternative compliance or some other option. If they had trees, I'm sure they would want to try to preserve those, but if they didn't have trees, try to find some alternative compliance, which is allowed through the ordinance.
Councilman Burke.
Yes, I'm not against this, but what about the folks already planting these gardens in front yards? How are you going to help them to understand that this is not the right thing to do?
Well, Councilmember Burke, gardens in front yards, those are allowed currently, and those would also continue to be allowed under this ordinance because there's no regulation in terms of this ordinance. It doesn't change anything relating to accessory gardens on people's property, and that's what those type of gardens are. So if that was something that the council wished to address, that would have to be added in this amendment.
So to clearly understand you, in my front yard, if I want to, I could plant a garden.
That's correct.
Is it anything about the appearance of how I keep my garden in my front yard?
The city does have the minimum housing code that could be enforced if the grass or vegetation gets too tall or things of that nature. But in terms of if you keep it nice and neat and tidy, there's nothing on the books that says you can't have a garden in your front or side yard visible from public rights of way.
What about corn stalks there all year long?
Again, that's currently allowed as long as it's an accessory use and on someone's residential property.
All right, Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff, for moving forward with this. I don't recall how long we've been talking about it. It seems like since I've been on the council, which would be about 6 years. But as you can see, where food disparity and hunger has gotten to over the past 6 years and where we are right now, if you live in a rural area, it's pretty easy to establish a garden and go out and get you some cabbage or lettuce or whatever it is, squash, tomatoes. But if you live in a city, in an urban core where there are no grocery stores, there are no corner markets like when I was growing up. There are no produce anywhere. But we have plenty gas stations and cigarette dispensers and sweepstakes and people that sell us the alcohol and things like that. But we do not have anywhere where we can eat fresh food. I think this is, as a matter of fact, this is a very soft spot in my heart. I'm very passionate about it. Staff has heard me over and over again that I think people should have the right to at least an opportunity to grow their food. If we, as a city, as a country, developers and others do not feel a need to come to us with fresh food for our children and our seniors and our physically and mentally challenged and the poor, this is a big piece of legislation or ordinance, as you want to call it, from my perspective. The ability to be able to invite development and investment in the community to be able to do hydroponics or urban gardens, urban agricultures, that eventually manufacturing, micro style, that we can grow our food, process our food, teach our community how to cook the food, and teach our children what it's like to eat healthy food versus fast foods that contributes to the health of the people. We have two of the greatest medical facilities in the Southeast, but we also, by all of the data that we're receiving daily from reports that tell us Winston-Salem is the urban core in the 12th Congressional District, we are in need of a lot of things: poverty, jobs, education, but most importantly, food. So I commend you for working with us, working with me anyway. I know Mr. Norby and Mr. Garrity and Mr. Page and some others have pretty much gotten tired of me with this, but I can't thank you enough on behalf of the citizens of Winston-Salem for moving forward with this. And I look forward to people calling and someone saying, as Ms. Burke said, we got too many corn stalks growing in the community, but you know, that'll be a good thing, and that'll be a good problem to have that we can move forward with. Again, I thank you for this tremendously.
Councilor McIntyre?
Everybody that I've spoken to or has spoken to me about this is just very, very pleased and very positive about it, and I'm going to certainly vote for it. I do have one quick question, though, about what happens if someone grows, let's call it a noxious item in their garden. Is there redress as a neighbor? I mean, I'm in the real estate business, and I know how disputes can occur. What's the neighbor's?
That would probably be a city code question. I'm not sure if the city attorney would like to weigh in on that, but in terms of the unified development ordinances, there's nothing in there relating to that.
I'll check the city code. I believe there may be provisions either in chapter 62 or 27.
While she's looking at that, let's see, Councilmember Taylor had a comment or a question.
Yeah, I'll just make my comment quick. I don't want to belabor the hour, but I will say that this is urban gardening is the wave of the future, especially in areas where there's poverty, food deserts. This is the way to go. Madam City Attorney, I see you looking at something else, so I'll maybe direct this question to Mr. Norby. In the event that there is vacant property and there is food growing on that property, who is able to partake of the food? Would it be the person who pulled the permits? And how would we enforce if something of an alternate nature were to happen?
I think what is contemplated in this is that the owner of that property, whatever that is, would be petitioning to the Board of Adjustment for that use permit to make use of that. And then I think it's really up to them as to how they work the cooperative arrangements as to who takes part in the.
See, that's what I'm concerned about.
I don't think we would necessarily try unless there was a condition put on by the Board of Adjustment, I don't think we would be trying to police who is getting food from it there. So.
The main thing our staff is concerned about is just making sure that no one's going to what they see as just free space in the community to do what they wish with and growing something on it, and then the out-of-town owner comes by one day and says, whoa, there's a vegetable garden on my property. So that's why we want to make sure that anyone works with, receives permission from the actual property owner. That's something our staff would be looking for to review one of these requests, and the Board of Adjustment would be given that information as well. But again, as Mr. Norby said, we don't have any legislation that would limit what the applicant did with that food, how it was distributed once the actual permitting process was approved.
All right, I just feel like it should be brought up for consideration. Just food for thought. No pun intended.
That's where Montgomery.
Two pieces. One, in reference to the point that was brought up, I think, by Councilmember Burke around just the front yard piece. I think that is something to consider and to keep in mind as we look through this, even though this does not address that specifically. As we see this continue to grow and develop as something I think that's important for our community to take advantage of, I think it can become an issue in community sometimes if that's something that's not controlled, and how that works can cause some issues in neighborhoods. But what I do say at this point, I think is very great that we're being able to explore this for the points that have been made, particularly when we look at the economics and opportunities that exist here for communities and neighborhoods to take advantage of the opportunities that exist when we look at the issues we face as a community now. So I encourage us to make sure we put this word out to community because I think we're going to see some grand opportunities, some things that we may not have even envisioned as of yet kind of grow and develop out off of this being able to be expanded in this manner.
Thank you. Councilor Light?
Thank you. I can assure you, Councilmember Taylor, that there are going to be people who will help themselves from your garden. That's certainly the case in Old Salem, and in that case, they're taking heirloom plants, and certainly the neighborhood garden just up the road from me. People help themselves, but I guess if they're that hungry.
That's what it's designed to do.
Yeah.
Councilor Burke?
I was going to say, some years ago, Mr. Johnny Hunter, who's here, he really started neighborhood gardens. He's here, Mayor.
Let me stand
Stand up, please, so
Here,
people
here.
can see you. He really did. Thank you.
I wanted to say, and picking up on that, when I began the childhood obesity prevention program that we've been working on, we actually employed Reverend to work with the children at Petrie Elementary and created a wonderful garden over there. And I believe you fed about 30 families that summer from the children working over there, and they learned about good gardening habits. So it's a great program. We're a little bit off the subject there. This is a public hearing. We have a number of individuals signed up who would like to speak. If you would, give your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. First person is Cassidy Wagner. Cassidy, right.
Cassidy Wagner, 2422 Lucille Street, Winston-Salem, 27127. Just want to say quickly that I'm sorry that most of the folks from the east side have already left, because I feel that these two issues are immensely intertwined, and I commend the council for hearing this very important issue. I'd like to voice my support for adopting this measure and to please implore the council to keep the fee at $25, which obviously has happened. We live at 2422 Lucille Street, about 2 miles south of here. We purchased the property in 2009, and about 4 years ago, we reevaluated our lifestyle, and our principal tenet was to grow our own food for our family of 7. We grow several thousand pounds of food year-round in our garden. We grow from sweet potatoes to popcorn, he's left, in the summer, and from cabbage to digging super sweet carrots out of the frozen ground in fall and winter. All those things are great, but the true beauty of our garden is the community of neighbors that it has grown. We give impromptu tours to neighborhood children, adults, and complete strangers on a weekly basis. In the height of the season, summer or fall, neighbors come to our door, and we are able to help them harvest fresh food from our yard and fill their food line plastic bag for $1, as opposed to walking the 3-mile round trip to the store for food that is not organic and certainly not as fresh. While we are not a community garden, we act as one in all sense of the term. Pictures of our property, thanks to Google Maps from 2007, illustrate the blight that our property was. To your point, sir. As you can tell, it's very, very difficult to see. Overgrown, weedy, and passed by unnoticed daily. An apt description for much of the land that we are talking about here today. That is the street view. This is my property here, by the way.
You have about 50 seconds left.
Fair enough.
Wow.
Pictures of our property from this past Saturday show a completely different story. Managed, lush, and a hub for a community that just needs your support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Janelle Hunter. Janelle Hunter.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And the Honorable Mayor Allen Join, and I just dearly love our beloved Mayor Pro Tem Vivian Burke. But anyway, I just feel honored to be here. I rushed to get here. Earlier today, I was out working in the garden on East 25th Street here in Winston-Salem. And I was listening and observing, a comment was made in reference to the appearance of a front yard garden. And I want to verify for the record in the journalnow.com, www.journalnow.com. My wife, she says, someone come to the house and they wanted to talk to you. I said, what about? She said, the garden in the front yard. At that time, we was living on Sprague Street here in Winston-Salem. Oh, by the way, I'm John L. Hunter. My address now is 144 Apartment D, East 2nd Street, right over in the East Winston area, past the Bitech, over, close to downtown. But anyway, let me get to the point. And she said, the lady from the Journal came by, she wanted to talk to you. I said, that'd be fine. So we set up an appointment with the Journal here in Winston-Salem, and they came by and did an interview, and they was very pleased with the cottage garden we had in our front yard on Sprague Street. And by the way, you can go to your computers and you can look up www.com Journal Now, and you can observe growing trend / John L. Hunter, and that will give you more details in reference to our garden program throughout the whole Piedmont Triad area. But I'm going to briefly share with you about the experience I've had down through the years. I just feel really happy to hear about the success is being made through Mayor Allen Jones Childhood Obesity Program over at Peachtree Elementary School. And that is a statewide model for the elementary schools, and they are working diligent. In fact, I was over there earlier yesterday morning, and they are well pleased. They have a committee. It's a working committee. They have something like 75 parents as well as the students and the teachers working, and it's just a splendid opportunity. And I also heard someone mention about the urban community gardens. Well, then, I know when I was a teenager, I used to live up in Castle Heights. And my dear beloved grandmother, I noticed that Miss Phillip and her mother.
Reverend Huntley, I hate to cut this off, but your 3 minutes are just about up. Could you summarize?
Okay, then. But I just want to say that community gardens is a wonderful thing. And then let us think in reference to health and nutrition for our youth, our families, that we can be healthy, successful citizens as we grow up and carry on the legacy to eat right, live right, and do right. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Martha Hartley.
Good evening,
Good
Mayor
evening.
Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and members of City Council. I'm Martha Hartley, 600 South Main Street, 27101. Tonight, I bring a historical point of view from Old Salem Museums and Gardens. Urban farming has roots in our community going back 250 years and certainly thrives in Old Salem today. When Salem was first established in 1766, gardens were considered essential and were designed into the town plan. Residential lots all had large garden areas. There were outlying agricultural fields available for cultivation as well. Salem was established as a town of crafts, trades, and professions. It was designed as the urban center for Wachovia and was never intended to be an agricultural community. However, gardens were everywhere in Salem and supplied families with vegetables and fruits as well as medicinal herbs and flowers. Characteristic of the wise land use policies of the Moravians, vacant lots in towns were available free of charge to residents for supplemental gardens and orchards. In this way, until needed for building purposes, vacant lots were kept useful, neat, and vermin-free. The Single Brothers house fronts Main Street at Salem Square, and in the backyard is a large kitchen garden that historically fed as many as 60 men and boys at one time. This productive and beautiful garden is restored in Old Salem today. There's deep precedent for urban farming in our community, and its growth and expansion can only bring good, healthy opportunities for citizens. In a recent conversation with horticultural therapist Lee Nading, we were talking about the empowering nature of growing your own food. And Lee reminded me of the analogous proverb, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Urban farming is empowering. I encourage your support of the proposed UDO amendment and also your leadership in increasing opportunities for every citizen to learn to grow food and to be empowered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Brennan.
Good evening. I'm Mary Jack Brennan, 1450 Fairchild Road, Winston-Salem, 27105. I want to thank the mayor and the council here for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and I also want to thank the planning staff for their diligent efforts in working with community partners on this urban ag ordinance. As a North Carolina Cooperative Extension agent here in Forsyth County, I'm excited about the potential local foods development that urban agriculture will provide for our citizens. My job at Extension is to provide technical assistance and education to farmers and growers and to help food entrepreneurs with value-added products. I look forward to supporting new urban agricultural enterprises in Winston-Salem as the result of the adoption of this ordinance. At Extension, we do have the Forsyth Community Garden Resource Program where we work with community gardeners. We do a lot of educational programming. We train community garden mentors to work with community gardens on best practices. I actually work with small farmers and with urban agriculture growers. So there is a resource here. Extension is a resource for the city of Winston-Salem as well as all people in Forsyth County. Agriculture as a legal use of empty lots in our urban core makes sense for our society, economy, and our environment. Increased access to healthy food, economic opportunity for urban farmers, neighborhood revitalization, and an improved environment are all could be results from the passage of this urban ag ordinance. I know there's a lot of support for urban ag for the passage of this in the room, and I'd like to just ask anybody who's here to support it to please stand up, because I know everybody may not have a chance to speak to you tonight at this late hour. You've also received a petition where you have a number of signatures of citizens who are supporting passage of UDO 257. I want to urge you to adopt this. I want to pledge that I will work hard to make sure that we do have best practices for urban agriculture in Forsyth County, in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you. Lorraine Morris, Mortis, excuse me, Lorraine Mortis.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members.
Good evening.
My name is Lorraine Mortis. I live at 111 East Devonshire Street in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27127. I am a Forsyth County garden mentor, and I am also a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Phi Omega chapter here in Winston-Salem. I am excited that this is the 4th year that my sorority is participating in community gardening at the Enterprise Center on the site formerly that housed the old Boys and Girls Club. Anybody that knows me knows that I love to play in the dirt a lot, and my wish is that other people can have that opportunity as well. We are blessed that we have a place that we can garden and provide fresh vegetables for our community. By you supporting this ordinance, you will open up land that other people can also play in the dirt. So please lend your support to this ordinance so that you can help Alpha Kappa Alpha, other community gardens, and other members of the community change the world one seed at a time. Thank you.
Irma Jackson.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
My name's Irma Jackson. I live at 846 Granville Drive in Winston-Salem. I am a community garden mentor. I'm also a master gardener, and I come to speak in support of this ordinance because I think that many of you have already said some things that I want to say, but I want to remind you that a vacant lot, as a vacant lot is, often is overgrown. If there are children in the neighborhood, it is unsightly. It has vermin. It has the potential to create dangerous situations for everybody involved. Putting a garden on a lot allows people to do several things. First of all, it allows you, we live in a place now where most of us, When I grew up, most of the people on the block knew who I was, and they knew everybody else. Now, most people don't know their next door neighbor. So having a garden would allow people to get to know their neighbors again. It increases the diversity in the neighborhood because everybody works together. It helps to eliminate the crime because now you know who the strangers are in your neighborhood. Because if you worked with these people in the garden, you know who doesn't belong there. So if there are people who come into your neighborhood for activities that are not kosher, then you know that. It allows children to learn a hobby that is a lifelong hobby, something that they can use forever, not just something that they use to eat from. It also allows the people in the neighborhood to actually have a sense of worth because now they are growing their own food. They know where their food came from. The garden that I helped to mentor, I mentored that garden, started it because I wanted the children in that neighborhood to know where their food comes from. There are a lot of adults who don't know where their food comes from other than the grocery store. So it's important that we teach not only children but adults to learn where their food comes from and to help them to understand that there is something that our city can do for all of us, and that is to approve this UDO. So I encourage you to support it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any other individuals who are in favor of this would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good day. My name is JP. I reside at 1004 Rundell Street, and I just want to highlight the benefits for this text amendment. The improvement of nutritional health of our communities, economic development in our communities, community resilience and building, eradication of food deserts, sustainable practices, opportunity for residents to become entrepreneurs, and the potential for micro-development that can counter systemic economic discrimination in the east and south side. I hope you guys make a socially conscious decision and support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents? We do have one individual signed up in opposition to this, Joanne Allen. Okay, your name is on the list. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Pardon me. I've been out in the garden all day myself.
Could you state your name and address, please, for the record?
My name is Michael Banner. My address is 515 North Jackson Avenue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just going to keep it short. Basically, I woke up this morning like I wake up other mornings, and the first thing I do is put my hands in the dirt and touch the vegetables and pull up a few weeds or whatever. Then I run back in the house. Sometimes I make cereal or oatmeal for my daughter, get her started. Maybe turn on TV, keep her preoccupied while I'm going back out pulling up some more weeds. You know, I'm a one-man show in the daytime. Then I pull her outside, and while I'm pulling up leaves and old weeds, sometimes worms come out. So I let her, because her eyes are sharper than mine, she'll pick out the worms, throw them in a bowl, throw some dirt on top of them, and then we throw them in the bin. But the thing I'm trying to express is I wasn't raised into that lifestyle, but it evolved on me by having girls and seeing my girls born. I knew it was going to be necessary to be able to feed them. And my money wouldn't allow me to be able to go get healthy food by being a vegetarian. It wasn't real feasible for me to go into Food Line or the neighboring grocery stores and find food that's suitable for my family. So it was hard for me to go back and forth to the west side to Whole Foods, which I prefer. So I had to immediately go into the garden. I started growing everything that I could, and like I said, I'm keeping it short. Basically, I'm real sensitive towards the plight of my neighborhood and my people. Like I said, I'm from 515 North Jackson Avenue, and I want to make sure that we're involved and engaged in this process as being able to develop our communities instead of others coming into our community and trying to develop it and including us in it. Just have a little bit of trust and faith in our people, just like they said, the size of a mustard seed, that we may be able to bring ourselves up out of this condition through agriculture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else like to be heard? All right, seeing no, yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you can tell, I've been in the garden as well today. I'm a recent graduate.
Would you state your name and address?
My name is Milgo Floyd. I'm at 3602 Cherry Street, and I'm a recent graduate, actually Thursday, from Forsyth Technical Community College in environmental science. So
Wonderful.
this means a lot to me when it comes to community gardening. I mean, the ethos behind it is that, first of all, like was stated earlier, Mary Jack said, a lot of kids don't know. They think Food Lion, they think Harris Teeter just supplies their food, supplies their meat. You know, and there's one thing that I've learned being a gardener, and I'm hoping to work with Mary Jack and be a community gardening mentor now that I have time since I'm out of school, is that you can tell the difference in your food. The pesticides are horrible. You know, a lot of kids do not know. You know, if it were up to me, I would have a class in elementary school where children see how they get their chicken, how they get their beef, how they get their pork. It's not a pretty thing. But I think a big problem with our youth now is they don't realize they're spoiled. They're blinded to the fact of everyday things that we do, they take for granted. But besides that fact, community gardening is a special thing. You know, when you get a kid to see a tomato plant grow, and to let that tomato and to pick that tomato plant off, and to taste it, you'll never. It's the best learning experience you could ever teach a child. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? All right, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed and recognize Councilmember Light. This came out of your committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is from another person who loves to grub in the dirt. So I move for approval of, one, the statement of consistency is set forth on page 309 of the agenda book, and two, UDO text amendment 257.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Bessie.
Just, I don't want to belabor the point, but just briefly, we've gotten a lot of strong support for urban gardening. And actually, the examples have helped point out how much of it's already going on in Winston-Salem. And most of what's going on is going on residential lots where somebody's living. It's an accessory use, it's allowed currently, and it will continue to be allowed. So anybody that's worried about that, don't be, because it will continue to be allowed in your life. The change here is that from a situation where agriculture is only allowed in the city on large lot zoning districts, of which we have essentially none in the city, it'll now be allowed either by simple permit or by a zoning board of adjustment special use permit on most of the residential zones that we have in the city now, and a lot of the commercial zones. So there will be a lot of additional areas that will be opened up to the possibility of those small lot community type gardens. And so that's the legal significance of the change that's before us tonight in essence. You know, there are already some of those out in the community. I know there's one in the Ardmore neighborhood already in operation through, I believe, a special use permit. So now there'll be opportunity for a lot more of those. And those of you who are actively involved in this area, you'll have a much broader selection of lot options that you can go to make a deal with the owners for, rent that weedy lot and turn it into a garden.
Mr. McIntosh.
Just real quick, I wanted to see if Ms. Carmen had an answer for me on the noxious plants.
There are provisions within Chapter 62 of the code that address green vegetation, which includes but is not limited to grass, weeds, noxious plants, exotic, invasive plants, poisonous plants, and so forth. And the provisions vary slightly depending upon the size of the lot.
And that would be driven by a complaint from a neighbor?
Generally, or inspectors out in the field that see problem lines.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Burke, did you have?
No, it's just good. It's
Okay,
wonderful.
all right, good. Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 10.
Item 10, consideration of items relating to financial assistance to Herbalife. A, public hearing and resolution approving financial assistance to Herbalife. And B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2014-2015.
I asked Assistant City Manager Page to give us just a brief summary of this proposed economic development program.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is a request from Herbalife for $150,000 economic development assistance that would come from the Dell Repayment Fund. Keep in mind that not only is this money a match with the county's assistance, it is also a match with the state of North Carolina's assistance. So they all sort of build upon one another for the total assistance for the project. In return for the assistance over 2 years, the company would create a $3.5 million investment in capital and real property as well as machinery and equipment. And they would also create approximately 301 new jobs over a 4-year period. As part of the incentive, we provide approximately $500,000 per job.
No.
What did I say? No. It's late. $500 per job, and the money would be provided over a 4-year period for each job. So after the first 12 months, we'd make the first payment, then subsequent payments were made for the next 3 years. So it takes 4 years to get full payment of $500 per each job created. So the job would have been in the community that length of period before it actually would get paid out completely. The city's assistance is based upon approximately 55% of the net new taxes, both in sales tax and property tax that would be generated from the project. So the project would, in fact, pay for itself over a 6-year period. Happy to answer any questions you may have about the project.
Any questions for Mr. Page? Councilman Burke?
Yes. Now, this is the time, I think, when citizens talk about involvement and to understand things. And I believe in economic development. I know that we have to have it to generate revenue back in the community. But I have disagreed with how we provide the jobs. When we bring companies in here, they come in with the top jobs. So you're saying a salary at $40,194 would be the average salary.
For the original deal, Councilman Burke, that was the salary. For the deal that we're looking at this time, the average salary would be $61,000.
Yes, and every time we talk about this, and we'll ask you, how many of our actual citizens living in the city of Winston-Salem will get these jobs? With all the unemployment we have, and I've said it many times, with the smart people we have in this city who's been downsized without jobs, what assurance do we have that they will get some of these top jobs?
The company is committed to, they have projected about 70% of the new jobs, or of the jobs would be new hires in North Carolina. They are committed and understand our commitment to hiring local. Legally, I think the city attorney will tell you that federal law will not allow us to say you have to hire North Carolina residents or Winston-Salem residents, but they understand and recognize our commitment, and we do put in the agreement that they have to make a good faith effort in order to try to hire Winston-Salem and Forsyth County residents.
You know, I'm going to say this. I have gone along with jobs and opportunities bringing companies, but I have not agreed, and I've not really felt good, even though I have voted And I've said to this city manager that it really bothers me that we continue to give our tax dollars. And even I'm going to just say what I feel. Now, we have Mr. Leak is here. Mr. Leak has staff, and his staff is mainly majority people. Have you hired any minorities? Even a man who comes to us on many occasions and asks for these tax dollars, and when you look at his staff, it does not mirror the community. And I think that itself, and then when you tell me what legally we can do, there are other cities who know what they legally can do, but sometimes when these people want this money, they know how to work with the city. Somebody said to me one time when we first started talking about this, oh, you can't tell people what to do. Well, you're giving them these dollars. You can say to them, we expect this. And I think it's a shame and a disgrace when you count how many dollars we have given to all these companies, and not you, Mr. Page, you just only deliver it. You don't have a thing to do. If you bring it to us, you don't have no gun at our heads. We're the ones that sit up here and we do it. We vote for it. And I have said that we're eager, we're anxious, and we do want jobs in this community. And the mayor know I have told him more than one time, I don't like how we do it. I don't like the end results when we see how few citizens whose tax dollars we're using have opportunities for these jobs. And I think the first order of business would be to look at that business, it's called Business Inc., who comes down here. And I've said it to Mr. Leak. You bring your staff in front of us, and you're all a majority people. And it doesn't bother him because he knows we're going to vote on what he wants, and he doesn't try to change. And I think it's just not quite the thing that we ought to have representing us like this.
Councilmember Montgomery, do you have a question of Mr. Page?
I do. Not so much in terms of the structure of this deal, but specifically going back in reference specifically to the jobs and the jobs that we place. I brought this up in committee, and I bring it up again in terms of specific commitment to diversity in all areas of the organization, whether it's the management positions to the frontline positions. What is the statement from Herbalife in reference to that commitment?
They have provided the numbers that they're going to provide based upon showing 56% minority and 44% non-minority in their entire operation, and feel that that speaks for itself. Specific to management. They will not provide that information.
Okay, Councilman Clark.
Yeah, but the 56% is the company right now. That's what Herbalife does.
Yes, sir.
Okay. By the way, I was not at the Finance Committee when this was considered, so I will ask a few questions. I do know that we do audit it to be sure they have hired the people they've hired and that they have paid the salaries they've paid.
Correct. That's part of we do an audit each year when we make a payment. We've never made a payment to them. They won't actually get their first payment for incentives until July 1st of 2015. At that point, they will submit all of the appropriate documentation showing what their salaries are, showing all the documentation that's been asked for. But up to this point, we have not made a payment to them other than the original upfront payment of $343,000.
But in the case of this particular project, we will not pay them until they fill the forms out, so to speak, listing how many they've hired and how much they've paid them to be sure the numbers add up.
That's correct, and it's the exact same form they have to submit to the Employment Security Commission.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councilman Adams, you have a question?
Yes, I do have an issue. Again, granted, I like the fact that we go get these jobs. The name of the game has been for me and us since '09 is how important it is that we provide or negotiate to get jobs here in Winston-Salem. The issue that I have is, again, that, when I took the tour out there, I wasn't happy with what I saw. Again, those folk that know me, I've been in manufacturing when I worked for over 38 years. If they can't provide me with the numbers, their figures on their demographics and their diversity for management, I can't support this. You know, as much as I love the people that are working there, I cannot support it, because if you're a company or anybody that's doing the right thing, at least trying to adhere to the requests of the people who are saying, you need money, okay, we can give you money, we can loan you money, incentivize it, but these are just the minor things we need. We need information. All that is information. And Mr. Page, like Ms. Burke said, we're not beating you up, but that's all we're asking for is information. Why would you be afraid to give me the information if you're okay with the information? So, can't support it without that information. Sorry.
Councilmember Taylor.
Just a general policy question. Madam City Attorney, I know a lot of times when we decide as a council that there is legislation that would benefit us in Raleigh, we put together a package, we deliver it to the delegation. Some of our staff go to Raleigh along with some of the council members, and we talk to our legislators about, how it would benefit our community. I would say, just as a general rule of policy, we should probably put together the same package for this on the national level to present to our legislators, whether it be Ms. Fox, Ms. Adams, and everybody else who represents us in Washington, D.C. Now, I know, they may or may not take it to the floor, but it's incumbent upon us to bring it to them and encourage them, since they represent us, to bring it to the floor for consideration. I mean, you hear people talking about jobs, but they're telling us what we can and what we cannot do. Let's take it to Washington, D.C. We go there once a year to lobby for capital projects. That needs to be on the top of our list of things to do. There are others of us who go to work on other things for our individual communities. So if you can help us to pull that together as a general policy rule, we'll go up and take a look at that in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you. Mr. McClure, do you have another question?
Just a comment.
Well, let's keep our comments till we get ready to consider the item, if we could. We haven't had a public hearing.
I think this will be relevant.
All right, go ahead.
Given that I hear some concerns on the council, I'm wondering if it's not best to postpone this to the next meeting, which is the 20, somebody give me a date. 18th, and that give the staff time a little bit longer to see if maybe we can define if they do have 300 people working, maybe where they live.
Okay. All right. So without objection, would we
Mayor,
remind this to the?
They're not going to provide the information. They've provided all they're going to provide.
Let's just. I think Councilmember Clark may have a good point there. Let's see if we can make some things. So I would say let's remand this to the Finance Committee, actually.
Because we do meet next week.
And then we'll bring it back for additional items.
Okay.
We'll continue the public hearing to the May 18th. Is that right? Okay.
And then my motion is to remand this back to the Finance Committee next week.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Thank you. All right. Item number 11.
Item 11, continuation of consideration of ordinances approving requests for certificates of public convenience and necessity for 2 taxicab companies in the city of Winston-Salem. A, continuation of public hearing on ordinance approving requests for certificates of public convenience and necessity of city cab for the operation of 14 taxicabs in the city of Winston-Salem.
Councilmembers, for your information, at your place is a corrected ordinance related to item 11A. Mr. Turner indicates it's just basically a couple of technical changes on there, nothing that would affect the basic deal. Again, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? It's a continuation. All right. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed and would recognize this Councilmember Taylor from the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, members of the council. If we can remember all the way back to December, I believe this item was unanimously approved by Public Safety on December the 8th of 2014. Considering there's no one here to discuss it in the form of a public comment period, our staff has reviewed it, the council has reviewed it. I move for approval at this time.
Second.
Okay, this is a motion to approve item 11A, amended ordinance that's in your place. All right, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. 11B.
Item B, second reading on ordinance approving requests for certificates of public convenience and necessity of Bluebird Taxi for the operation of 5 taxicabs in the city of Winston-Salem.
Councilmember Taylor.
So moved.
Second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Item 12.
Item 12, second reading of ordinance amending Chapter 74 of the City Code relating to streets and sidewalks, buskers, street performers, This item received a vote of 4 in favor and 3 opposed at the April 20th, 2015 council meeting. Lacking the required 2/3 majority vote for adoption on its first reading, the item is placed on this agenda for a second reading.
Recall, we'll consider this item, and then we'll consider the amendment that Councilmember Taylor is proposing. Councilmember Light?
I will move approval.
Second. Discussion? Councilmember Bessie?
Yes, I had a question for council. The item that was added to the agenda, the proposal by Councilmember Taylor, if we adopt the motion that's on the floor, and then subsequently consider Councilmember Taylor's amendment, are we empowered to act upon it favorably if the votes are there this evening and have it taken? All right, thank you.
All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously. Let's then, without objection, consider the proposed amendment. And Councilmember Taylor, do you wish to speak to the amendment? Or,
Yeah. Mayor, members of the council, I'll keep this as brief as possible because I know I'm preaching to the choir. This item passed 4-3, and there was one element that we couldn't quite get a handle on because some of the council wanted to move forward, get the tool in the police officer's toolbox because the buskers out on the streets. There are others. I'm sure everybody was concerned about the misdemeanor element on the first offense. So the proposal that we have here in front of us, in section 74-400I, and is hereby amended to read as follows. Where a person is found to be in violation of this section, the person shall first be given a verbal notice and an explanation of the ordinance and violation. Issuance of the verbal notice shall be documented in the police department's field contact system. Any future violation of this section or any part hereof shall constitute a Class 3 misdemeanor and shall subject the offender to a fine as indicated below. The second offense will be $50. The third offense will be $100, and fourth and subsequent offenses will be $150. Given things that are going on with public safety across the nation, there are a number of people who are outcrying and saying that failed policies and other things have prevented them from being productive in the terms of jobs, economic development, and things of that nature. So I'll just ask the council to keep this into consideration. There are those who believe that a misdemeanor is a minor offense, but we know that these minor offenses affect people's ability to get financial aid, to be productive in the form of a job, and many other things. So I believe this is a good piece of compromise legislation that addresses all of our concerns and codifies the ordinance, and I would ask that you consider it at this time. So I'd move for approval, Mayor.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion on this? Councilmember Bessie?
Yeah, I would just note that I commend Councilman Taylor for seeking the compromise language here. I think it accomplishes what I was trying to do last time, and it does so without adding the complication of the civil penalty, but simply codifies what we are informed is the intended standard practice of the department.
Very good. All right, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Item 13.
Item 13, Mayor Jones' recommendations for appointments, reappointments to boards and commissions. A.
That's what I'd just say. On A, I'd like to not withdraw it, but continue that to the next meeting. We've got a little bit more work to do on that item A. Without objection, we'll continue that to the May 18th meeting. Thank you. All right, thank you. I think we just can. So B, please.
Okay. Item B, Downtown Winston-Salem Business Improvement District Advisory Committee, all terms expiring March 2018. Richard Brooks, Hotel Representative, appointment. Susie Baxter, Resident Representative, reappointment. And Adam Rake, Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership Board Member Representative, reappointment.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval. Second.
Second. Motion second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. C.
And C, Recreation and Parks Commission, all reappointments with terms expiring May 2018. Susie Fielders, Munden Guy Morgan, Sharon Roberts, and Jason Andrew Wilma.
Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you. And Councilmember Burke asked to be recognized.
Yes, I know that the night is drawing to an end, but I asked the city manager to put together some information Some years ago, when I looked at this city government, and I came and I went through City Hall, and I was really disappointed because it did not have the diversity that it should have had as far as employment. We had very few men, black women, white women in key jobs. I'm sure Mr. Jones understands this because he and I, when I first became elected official, as public safety chair, he was assigned to work with me. The things that was introduced with community development housing, he was assigned to work with me. A lot of things have been initiated. A lot of things have happened in this city. But when I look at the city government, I was in communication with the city manager. I said, you walk through City Hall, whether it's Bryce, Stewart Building, or the main City Hall, or some other areas where taxpayers are paying for these buildings. They're paying for these cars that city employees ride around in. They're paying for the gas they still let just run some of these cars. And then you go through, we look at the streets and everything where they have some of them doing the job. And then you have people doing some of the right-of-ways, and they don't even have to do it because we don't monitor when you do the streets as we should. But what I was really concerned about, when I look and you go into some of these offices, you have all whites. And you're talking about wanting people to come and live in the city. You have a lot of people who believe in diversity who are white. They feel more comfortable when they're in areas where there is a diversity. I have friends north, east, south, west. I have a diverse group of friends. We sit and we have lunch together and we talk and we observe how this city is. When I looked at the number of Hispanics we have, 15.1%, and we have 3.1 working. Asians, 2.1.0 working. African Americans, 34.8, 34.7 working. American Indians, 0.2 working. Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, 0.1 working. White, listen to this one, 56.4, 61 point working. Some other race, 4.5, and we have 4.3 working. 2 or more races, 2.5. Now, I commend the city manager. He inherited a lot, and I know that he's working hard, but the supervisors will have to do a better job, and the directors of these programs, because I don't think in this city we ought to walk through any building and see if it's all blacks, it's not right. If it's all Asians, it's not right. All whites, this is America. This is America. And if the people are trained, and we do have a lot of trained, qualified people, then they need to get the job. Now, I'm not going to go through my dissertation that I had the city manager to put together, but I'm serious now. But what I want the city manager to do, because we sit here and we allow people to say what we have not done. When I got elected, you know it, we had I don't know how many slums east of 52. We had areas where they had outside facilities, and we had streets that was not even paved. It was terrible. And we have made some progress. So I'm going to ask the city manager to put this somewhere so folks can see what we've done. And I wish Miss Allen had been here because I really wanted to hand this to her. And I want you to really send her a copy. And please ask her to see if you're telling me the truth, to analyze in a critical way when it comes to redevelopment area housing production summary from 1975 to 2006, and let it be known we have distributed money in a more of an equal way. We've not been like some cities. They have not done it in an equal way. That's why you have the Baltimores and the Fergusons, and I blame the national president of the NAACP, the national president of the Urban League, the national president of the Democratic Party, and those Democrats who was in party, who was in control for allowing certain things to happen. They have nobody to blame but themselves. Mr. Republican, numbers count. If you have the numbers, you're going to do the job. How many of you understand that? If you're in the political world. So I'm going to say to the city manager, anyone else, I want you to make them aware. We have not done bad. And we sit here and allow people to act like we have not done a thing. We're further ahead in public safety than most cities around the United States. But we keep our mouths closed and we act like we can't speak. And also give the press this too so they can get some good information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Burke. I think that would be some good information for all of us to have. It would be good to have.
All right.
Councilman Burke did remind me we are underway with public hearings and discussions on the proposed revised bus routes that was alluded to tonight, and so I would just encourage members of the public to take advantage of that. I guess those meetings are on the website, Mr. Manager, that they could find out about that. Okay, Councilman Bessie?
Yeah, actually, if you go to, I think it's wstransit.org or .com. Okay, WS Transit and try .org. If that doesn't work, try .com.
Thanks, .org.
.org. You'll get to the bus hearings, and there are a bunch of them. They're all over town.
Good. Thank you, Councilman. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second. Motion second to adjourn. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. We're adjourned.